Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case. The case of Justin Barber. The only sound is the gentle lapping of the waves from the calm ocean. But is this peace ever undisturbed? The Bahamas, a beautiful Caribbean archipelago near Florida, attracts many American couples for weddings. April and Justin Barber were also preparing to seal their union with the bonds of marriage on this stunning beach. Their families joyfully that the profound bond of love was about to unite them for life. Everyone looked forward to a memorable celebration and a future of happiness. In 1993, at just 17 years old, April lost her mother, who had been battling a serious illness for a long time. Unfortunately, the disease proved too strong. The family struggled to cope with this loss. Her father, unable to handle his grief, fell into depression and became addicted to banned substance, which made it impossible for him to care for his children. As a result, April had to take on the responsibility of looking after her younger brother and sister. She effectively became a mother figure, managing household tasks, taking her baby brother to daycare, and her sister to school. April worked hard to keep everything organized and ensure that important tasks were not overlooked. She also focused on her studies, determined not to let her circumstances lead her to drop out of school or fall into depression like her father. Through her strength and resilience, April was able to navigate this difficult period in her life. The death of her mother motivated her to pursue a career in medicine and help fight cancer. April's determination is impressive. She successfully enrolled at the University of Oklahoma, achieving her first goal. Her time as a student was filled with more joy. She made friends and found happiness again. In 1998, when April turned 23, she met Justin Barber, 20-year-old who was in his final year at the same university. Although April had dated other guys before, none compared to Justin. He was ambitious, one of the top students in his class, and had a clear vision for his future. April quickly fell in love, and her heart raced every time Justin walked by. Soon, Justin fell also deeply in love with her and decided to introduce her to his parents. April made a great impression on them, and they were thrilled with their son's choice. Their close friends recognized that Justin and April was meant to be together, and that nothing could stand in the way of their future. The couple felt the same way and decided not to delay their plans. They took a confident step and decided to get married. Some people initially thought of April and Justin's decision was rushed, but they quickly changed their minds and conquered by the love of the couple. In 1999, April and Justin took a week-long trip to the Bahamas to celebrate their long-awaited wedding. The celebration was a success, and they enjoyed their honeymoon. After moving to Georgia, they both found jobs. Justin became a salesman, while April worked in the radiology department, marking a significant advancement in her career. 2 years passed quickly. They was happy, and everything was going well. April and Justin faced their first challenge when Justin was offered a highly favorable position as a commercial director. It would be unwise to turn down such an opportunity. However, there was one issue. The job was located in Jacksonville, Florida, which was over 3 hours away from home. Despite this, April encouraged him to accept the job, confident that they would find a solution to the distance, since she couldn't leave her job in Georgia yet. She stayed behind while Justin moved to Florida. They agreed to meet on weekends in various locations. Although the situation was tough, they quickly adapted to their new circumstances. Time goes by without any major issues. On Saturday, August 17, 2002, April traveled to Florida to celebrate their 3rd anniversary. Their plans for the evening were simple. April wanted to have dinner at Caribas, a restaurant known for its delicious food and enjoyable billiards. Everything went according to plan. They enjoyed their meal and relaxed. After dinner, they got into the car but chose not to return home just yet. Instead, Justin drove them to a small, secluded beach they often visited to celebrate special occasions. They loved this spot for its tranquility. After arriving at their meeting spot, they settled in their favorite area and decided to take a barefoot walk along the beach. Their moment was interrupted by the sudden appearance of a stranger. April and Justin exchanged confused glances. People were so rare in this area. Before they could fully process the situation, the man began to threaten them in the moonlight. His face was hard to see, but they could tell he was wearing a cap and yelling loudly. Justin suspected it might be a robbery. Just then, the man pulled out a weapon without thinking. Justin charged at the stranger to protect April. A violent struggle ensued, followed by the sound of a weapon. Justin lost consciousness during the fight. When he woke up, he found himself alone on the beach. The attacker had fled. Simultaneously, April was missing. He called out her name, but there was no response. What had happened? Had the criminal taken her, or had she managed to escape? Perhaps she had gone to find help. Justin ran along the shore, shouting her name, but to no avail. In his desperation, he nearly panicked when he suddenly spotted a figure a few meters away. Justin approached and realized it was April lying face down in the water. Motionless, she was unconscious. He pulled April onto the sand and tried to wake her by talking to her, but she didn't respond. In the darkness, he initially missed the signs of her injuries, but then, as he examined her, he discovered she had been attacked multiple times. A horror came over him, and he understood he needed to act fast. Justin attempted to lift April's body but couldn't manage it. Instead, he grabbed her by the waist and began dragging her toward the road, which was several hundred meters away. Aiming for the embankment that led to the highway to flag down a car for help, he had to climb the stairs from the beach to reach the crossing, which forced him to try lifting April again. But he failed, summoning his last bit of strength. He finally lifted her, but immediately collapsed to the ground. He did not understand what was happening to him. There was no trace of energy left. Suddenly, Justin realized he was injured as well. Discovering 4 weapon wounds on his body, he faced a tough decision between to stay with April and most likely die with her, or go in search of help, leaving his wife in the wilderness. Ultimately, he chose to seek assistance and made his way to the road to hitchhike. After 3 cars passed without stopping, he spotted his own car parked nearby, struggling. He managed to reach it and got behind the wheel. Although he risked losing consciousness during the drive, he felt there was no other choice. As he entered the city, he continuously scanned for anyone who might help him. At a traffic light, when it turned red, he brought the car to a stop and dialed emergency services. The medics were the first to arrive, and he provided them with a detailed account of the situation. He urgently informed them that April was still on the stairs at the beach. The rescuers relayed this information to the police, highlighting that an armed robbery had escalated into an attack. The police faced a major challenge in locating April. Justin's information was not entirely accurate. He mentioned the beach and stairs, but failed to provide enough details to identify the exact crime scene. This resulted in a significant delay in their search. Eventually, they found April, but it was too late to save her. A murder investigation was initiated. Investigators visited the hospital to question Justin and gather information about the events of that tragic night at the beach. Upon entering his room, Justin immediately asked about his wife. They informed him that April had been found but could not be saved. After allowing him a moment to process the news, they asked him to describe the attacker in detail. Justin described the assailant as a tall, muscular man, weighing around 100 kilos. With an Asian appearance, his facial features were obscured, and he was wearing a cap and a loose t-shirt. However, these details were quite limited for investigation. The police recorded Justin's injuries, which included wounds on his arm, left shoulder, lower neck, and chest. Although these injuries were in sensitive areas, they were not life-threatening, and he was discharged from the hospital the following day. Justin attended April's funeral in Oklahoma, where he said goodbye to his beloved wife before returning to Florida. He is determined to help law enforcement find the dangerous killer. Justin spent over 10 hours at the crime scene, describing the events that occurred along the ocean shore and answering all the investigators' questions during this time. A potential lead surfaced. An eyewitness reported seeing a car parked next to Justin's on the night of the murder, however. This lead was considered unhelpful because the witness could not recall the car's model or license plate. Investigation into the case revealed that April was likely feeling anxious, so she carrying a stun weapon. Additionally, 3 weeks prior to the incident, her home had been robbed and her car had been broken into. This raised concerns that someone might have been stalking her or planning to harm her. To investigate further, they interviewed April's colleagues in Georgia. Everyone claimed that the break-in was unrelated to the murder, leading investigators to suspect that someone close to April and Justin may have had a motive to harm them. As the investigation continued, Justin became frustrated with what he perceived as a lack of urgency from law enforcement. He not realizing that detectives were deliberately keeping their true suspicions from him. They believed he was the actual killer. Justin's description of the robbery at a remote beach raised alarms among investigators, since such crimes were rare in that area. There had been no previous reports of similar incidents, and it seemed unlikely that a thief would wait several days to find a target. Additionally, after the attack, the assailant left behind Justin's belongings, including his wallet and April's diamond ring, which made it difficult to believe that the motive was theft. After Justin buried his wife, he returned to Florida. Eager to help with the investigation, he spent hours on the beach trying to remember details of the attack. However, detectives that closely observed his actions, they noticed that he seemed to be faking his grief. He covered his face with his hands, but did not actually cry. During questioning, Justin claimed that 3 cars drove past him without stopping to help. If this were true, at least one of the drivers should have called the police after seeing him hurt. But no calls were made. He also mentioned that he drove about 15 kilometers before stopping at a red light, which enabled him to call for emergency assistance. Investigators followed his route and were confused as to why he had driven such a long distance when there were numerous 24-hour stores nearby where he could have sought help. He passed by a McDonald's that was always open, as well as a pharmacy and a gas station, both of which never closed. Why did he need to drive 15 kilometers? These inconsistencies led the investigators to focus more on Justin. They started looking into the couple's seemingly perfect life, which once again revealed that appearances can be misleading. From an outside perspective, it appeared that Justin was very devoted to April. When they moved to Georgia, April's younger siblings came to live with them. However, the busy work schedules made it difficult to care for the children, so they decided to send them back to Oklahoma. Justin strongly opposed this decision, insisting that the kids stay with the family and becoming visibly angry. This reaction surprised their family members, who thought Justin was trying to maintain an appearance for show. Additionally, Justin often belittled April by constantly monitoring her weight and taking every opportunity to insult her if she gained any. This behavior took a toll on April, causing her significant emotional distress as she became fixated on dieting to avoid further criticism. Moreover, there is more serious evidence that points to trouble. April suspected her husband of infidelity during the weeks he spent in Florida. She believed he was seeing another woman, whose identity remained unknown. But she was aware that this woman attended tennis sessions with him. April had previously spoken to Justin about suspicions regarding his fidelity, but he denied everything. The investigators found Justin's mistress, Shannon Kennedy, an employee of a rental car agency that Justin worked. Shannon became involved in the investigation. She went to the police station for questioning and was extremely frank. She said that she and Justin really had an intimate relationship while she was being questioned. Justin was in the police station, unaware that investigators were speaking with Shannon when asked about her. He denied any intimate relationship, however. When the police threatened to bring Shannon in to compare their statements, Justin confessed to infidelity. This revelation led investigators to discover that the seemingly perfect Barber family was far from normal. What was most important was that Justin turned out to be a liar. If he could lie about his extramarital affair, Could he be lying about everything else? This made the investigators question his every word. The next step was to search the suspect's house, where investigators discovered 2 life insurance policies, each worth $2 million, and taken out in the names of both spouses. This fact serves as evidence against Justin, a second motive for April's murder. While the first motive was betrayal, investigators learned that the amounts on the insurance policies were arranged by Justin himself. It's clear that April was unaware of the total amounts, but she let him persuade her. Moreover, the summer of 2002 had been tough for Justin, as he fell into $50 of debt. Largely due to all his starting capital being burned up in the stock exchange, the connection gradually formed in the case. A husband deeply in debt and a $2 million life insurance policy taken out on his wife placed Justin at the top of the suspect list. However, there were significant hurdles in making a formal accusation. First, there was a lack of direct evidence linking him to April's murder. Second, Justin himself was attacked that night. With a bullet lodged in his chest, investigators was later determined that all bullets that hit him, including the one in his chest, missed vital organs. Investigators came to the conclusion that it was a wound that Justin had inflicted himself. The collection of evidence continued, which did not allow the suspect to be immediately arrested after moving to Oregon. Far from Florida, he found a job and eventually started a new relationship with a woman. It seemed that Justin's life had returned to normal, and American justice no longer bothered him. The case began to take on the character of a cold case. Despite the strong evidence against their primary suspect, investigators struggled to find anything that could lead to his conviction. Nevertheless, the Oklahoma justice system remained determined to prove his guilt. The female judge consistently pressured the state attorney general to charge Justin. The prosecutor hesitated to start the trial due to the uncertain outcome, but eventually, the prosecutor sided with the judge and sought justice so that Justin Barber's guilt would be established. In July 2004, nearly 2 years after April's tragic death, Justin was arrested and charged with her murder. It was another 2 years before the trial began in June 2006. Before discussing a conviction, the prosecutor needed to persuade the jury that Justin had premeditated the murder. The evidence pointed clearly toward him. They stated that if there had been another suspect or a viable lead, they would have pursued it. However, the lies and inconsistencies in Justin's own testimony only heightened the suspicion against him. The investigators presented the jury with reasons why Justin did not need to drive 15 kilometers to stop at the intersection, noting that there were 24-hour stores along the route. In response, Justin admitted he didn't remember clearly how he drove or what actions he took. It was surprising that he did not express this uncertainty earlier and only mentioned it after being questioned in court. Next, Shannon Kennedy spoke about her relationship with Justin. She revealed that she initially had no idea he was married, and the truth only came out after several meetings when it was the accused's turn to speak. He talked about April, claiming that he loved her but could no longer live with her. In this context, the indirect nature of what was said was clear. Justin's lawyers hurried to persuade the jury that he mentioned this without considering murder, but simply because he wanted to end his marriage. A common situation for many couples. It was time for the most difficult part of the trial for the prosecutor. However, they had a crucial piece of evidence. An expert information technology specialist testified in court about the contents of Justin's computer and made a surprising discovery. 6 months before the murder, Justin searched online for how to attack himself without dying. He also looked up terms like chest-attacked wound trauma. This is suggesting that he intentionally researched areas of the body where a bullet could be struck without causing fatal harm. The defense also provided its expert, a qualified doctor, who explained the seriousness of Justin's injuries. He noted that one of the bullets came close to hitting an artery, which could have led to a fatal outcome. The discussion then shifted to the last piece of evidence. When investigators discovered April's body, They observed blood on her face that flowed in a single direction and was evenly distributed. This was surprising to the investigators because Justin claimed that April's body had been handled roughly and had changed position 18 times. The defense expert clarified that only one side of April's face was bloody because her body was lying face down and partially submerged in water. It is likely that the water washed away. The listed points were the main ones in the trial, and it was on them that the jury had to rely when establishing or refuting the guilt of the suspect. The trial was complex, lacking direct evidence and the murder weapon, which was never found. The discussions lasted over 28 hours across 2 days, but the verdict was still not reached. A third day was required, and there were fears that the discussion would continue. The jury ultimately found Justin Barber guilty of premeditated murder for killing April. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole, despite Justin's repeated attempts to initiate legal proceedings to prove his innocence. None were successful. He will remain in prison for the rest of his life, with strong evidence, including digital data, financial transactions, and Justin's behavior before and after the case. The court made a fair judgment. Close a painful case. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Deanna Laney. Deanna Laney was known for being quiet, uncommunicative, and calm. She lived in a small town with a population of just 600. She was deeply religious and a member of the Pentecostal church, where her relative was the pastor, and she participated in the choir. People who knew Deanna were shocked by her actions, as no one suspected she might have mental health issues. She always appeared to be a loving, exemplary mother and wife. However, outside of the church, the family lived quite isolated from society. They had no close neighbors, and their home was situated on a large plot of land, distant from other houses. They chose to raise their children in the countryside, homeschooling them instead of sending them to public schools. Deanna, a housewife, is responsible for her children's education. This isolation likely contributed to others not noticing any problems with the seemingly loving mother. Their family lived in isolation from the outside world, to the point that only a small group of family members knew the details of Deanna's mental health problems. On the evening before Mother's Day, May 10, 2003, a 911 call was made from Northeast Texas. A calm female voice clearly told the dispatcher that she had killed her children. The dispatcher kept talking to the caller and guided her to the emergency service location. When police officers arrived at the small house in Chapel Hill, they identified it as the home of Deanna and Dale Laney. Inside, they found Deanna in pajamas, seemingly just woken up, looking confused as the police continued their investigation. Officers continued to search the area and eventually found the woman who had called 911. She was nearby in a small grove, wandering barefoot, in white pajamas covered in blood, still talking to the emergency dispatcher. It was 39 years old Deanna Laney. She calmly informed the police that her son's bodies were behind the swings in the yard. The officers went to the spot she described and discovered the bodies of 6-year-old Luke and 8-year-old Joshua. Both boys were lying on the ground in their underwear, their heads so severely mutilated that they were unrecognizable. The children had suffered fatal head injuries. Experienced detectives said this was one of the most horrific crime scenes they had ever encountered. However, there were only 2 bodies. Officers were told by Dale that they had 3 children. Despite this, they continued searching for the youngest child. They entered the house and checked the children's room, where they discovered 1-year-old Aaron. He was still alive but severely injured, covered in blood, and a pillow was over his face. Aaron was immediately taken to the nearest children's hospital and then moved to the Dallas Medical Center for treatment of the terrible injuries caused by his mother, Deanna. Deanna was arrested, but she was unable to give a statement due to mental health issues. She claimed that God commanded her to kill her sons. She used stones to attack the heads of the two children, Joshua and Luke. Although the youngest child, Aaron, was seriously hurt, but the boy survived the incident. Investigators questioned Dale, suspecting that he might have heard or seen something, as the children were likely to scream during the attack. However, he was bewildered and didn't understand how his wife could commit such acts. He mentioned waking up that night to the cries of Aaron, which was unusual since the child typically slept soundly. He went to the nursery and found his wife standing over the crib in the dark. She reassured him that everything was all right and that she was just soothing the baby. Trusting her, he went back to bed and slept throughout the incident. He only realized the true nature of his wife's actions when it was too late. Police were unable to learn of any problems Deanna was experiencing from Dale or her relatives. It was later discovered that she was hallucinating, which made her intend to kill her child, supposedly under God's influence. Among all the friends and family interviewed, only her sister, Pam, noticed changes in her behavior. Recently, Pam informed investigators that she started acting differently. During this time, she barely ate and lost noticeable weight. She spent all her free time reading the Bible and occasionally said strange things. However, Pam didn't think much of it. After discussing Deanna's behavior with Dale, she dismissed her concerns and felt reassured. The police observed Deanna's erratic behavior while she was in custody. Her condition visibly changed before their eyes. She would sometimes collapse to the floor in a fetal position and crying. Then she might stand up and start singing church hymns. At times, she seemed to realize what she had done, resulting in a vacant stare. It was clear that she was at a high risk of ending her own life, so the police followed protocol. Deanna was placed under special supervision to prevent self-harm. This was necessary to conduct a psychiatric evaluation, which later took place in a psychiatric clinic. The doctors questioned Deanna, and she smiled as she recounted her actions toward her sons. She laughed sincerely, believing she had fulfilled God's will. She was convinced her children would be resurrected, but she felt the youngest, Aaron, should have died too. She regretted that this did not happen, as she believed it meant she had failed to fully comply with God's demands. As punishment for her actions, she drank water from the toilet and licked it off the floor during her hospital stay. Deanna explained that she had resisted God's will for a long time. She did not want to kill her children, which she thought angered him. He increasingly insisted that she fulfill what was predestined. The longer she resisted, the more severe the punishments he demanded. Ultimately, she felt she had to surrender and follow his will. Deanna compared her actions to those of Andrea, who killed her two children 2 years earlier under similar religious delusions. According to Deanna, after the end of the world, Joshua and Luke would serve as witnesses at the Last Judgment, which is why she ended her own life. Deanna confided to doctors that she felt fighting those voices was a selfish act to save her child, even though it meant she was disobeying God. Ultimately, she believed she made correct decision by submitting to the Lord's will. Deanna recounted that on the night of May 9th, she was awakened by what she believed to be a message from God, telling her that the time had come. She quietly got out of bed to avoid waking her husband. First, she went to Aaron's room, where she had previously hidden a large stone intended for a ritual act. She used the stone to strike the baby on the head several times. The baby cried out, so she placed a pillow over his face to silence him. Her husband, Dale, half asleep, entered the room. She reassured him that everything was fine, so he left and went back to sleep. He was unaware of the situation and missed the chance to save his children. Deanna kept the pillow on Aaron's face until she heard a gurgling sound and then stopped. Next, Deanna woke her 2 older sons, Joshua and Luke, and took them to the backyard garden. She led Luke aside, instructed little boy to dig in the ground, and then began hitting him on the head with a large stone. She struck him at least 8 times, crushing his skull. Afterward, she dragged his body behind the swing and placed a large stone on his chest, believing this would prevent him from breathing. She then spoke to God, saying this was all she could do for her son. Then, lightning struck, which she interpreted as a sign that Luke had died. Afterward, Deanna went back to the garden and began hitting Joshua. However, he was bigger and stronger, so and resisted his mother more. She then pinned his arms down and struck his head with a stone until he stopped moving. After this, she dragged his body behind the swing. Immediately after the act, she called 911 and confessed to the horrific crime. Aaron also suffered severely. Though the baby survived, the injuries were so serious that he was left disabled. The child lost his sight and independence, needing a wheelchair for the rest of his life due to his mother's abuse. The case of Deanna had many similarities to Andreas. Both women lived in Texas and homeschooled their children. They were deeply religious and believed their actions were for religious purposes. Both felt that they had no other option but to harm their children. They each called 911 afterward, and both were evaluated by the same psychiatrists before their trials. Deanna was aware of Andrea's case and often compared herself to her, but Deanna's trial unfolded very differently. Deanna appeared in court in late March 2004. The prosecution sought to punish her for 2 first-degree murders and aggravated assault on Aaron, requesting the death penalty, which is applicable in Texas. Alternatively, she faced 3 life sentences for her crimes. The defense lawyers argued that she was innocent due to insanity. They claimed that insanity was the only reason a religious mother, who loved and homeschooled her children, would kill 2 of them and harm another without showing any emotion. In Texas, at the time of the murder, the state had some of the strictest laws in the United States regarding the handling of murderers. Defendants had to prove they had a mental disorder during the crime and convince the court they couldn't distinguish right from wrong. 5 psychiatrists formed a team to evaluate Deanna's. The examination lasted 6 days, during which she cried almost continuously. She refused to look at photographs of her mutilated children and the crime scene. Some psychiatrists believed she was sane when she killed her sons, while others thought she couldn't distinguish good from evil due to religious hallucinations. Deanna shared with doctors several details that even those close to the Laney family, including household members and relatives, did not know. The doctors concluded that signs of mental disturbances began appearing more than 3 years ago. An early indication, similar to hallucinations, was Deanna smelling sulfur, which she believed came from her children and perceived as a demonic sign. Deanna also reported seeing Aaron playing with a spear. She claimed that God had shown her 3 methods for her to kill her son, using a spear or a knife, a stone, and strangulation. While doing chores in the garden before the massacre, Deanna tripped over a stone. She realized that the stone would become the main weapon she would use to sacrifice her sons. She didn't tell anyone about this, but openly claimed that the Lord had spoken to her. She shared this in church, warning parishioners about the impending end of the world. However, the congregation largely ignored her, as such statements were common in their religious tradition, which not everyone followed. During her initial psychiatric evaluation, Deanna showed no emotion and genuinely believed her children would be resurrected. After taking antipsychotic medication, she eventually understood her actions differently and felt remorse. Deanna was horrified to realize she had been suffering from hallucinations that drove her actions. During a psychiatric examination, it was determined that Deanna was insane when she committed the murders of her 2 sons, Joshua and Luke. The examiners concluded that she suffered from psychotic delusions that prevented her from distinguishing right from wrong at the time of the murder. However, the prosecutor disagreed with the diagnosis that Deanna was insane when she committed the murders. He argued that even if she believed she was doing God's will, She should have known that her actions were wrong according to state law. The prosecutor pointed out that her first action after the murder was to call 911, which indicated that she was aware of the wrongness of her actions. Additionally, when Dale entered the room, she attempted to hide what had happened, further suggesting that she knew her actions were wrong. The prosecution also stressed that when Deanna was unable to complete killing Aaron, she told God that he just needed to do the rest. This statement demonstrated to the prosecutor that she was aware of right and wrong. The prosecutor believed that her actions were intentional and planned, which is not consistent with the behavior of someone who is insane. Prison guards testified at the trial, describing Deanna's behavior in prison as unusually compliant. They rarely saw such conduct and believed she had serious mental health issues. The 911 call recording was part of the evidence the jurors considered. Her voice on the call was eerily calm. Jurors also requested a psychiatric report to understand why she stopped attacking Aaron, who was 14 months old at the time. However, they reached a verdict before receiving the report. Deanna sat near the portrait of her 3 children and cried loudly as the prosecutor recounted the horrifying incident of how she used a rock to hit her children. Her sons, Joshua and Luke, were struck on the head so severely that their brains were exposed, leaving their heads in a bloody state. Deanna's husband, Dale Laney, 47, attended the trial and was devastated by the loss of his 2 sons. He couldn't comprehend how this tragedy occurred and believed it was appropriate to commit Deanna to lifelong treatment in a clinic. In the end, Deanna was declared innocent due to insanity and had to be treated for mental illness at the hospital. Doctors expected her to need lifelong treatment and doubted her recovery. Dale divorced Deanna after she was admitted to the psychiatric clinic in 2008. He eventually remarried and started a new family. He continues to care for his disabled son, Aaron. Deanna was closely monitored by psychiatrists for 8 years. In 2012, doctors determined that she no longer needed to stay in the hospital because she was healthy and did not pose a threat to herself or others. She was released on a number of conditions. She was to have no contact with minors. She needs court permission if she wants to change her address. Had to allow social workers to visit her at any time, and had to continue taking her prescribed medications and undergo drug and substance testing. Only a few people, including her lawyers, know where Deanna lives now. Her ex-husband, Dale, felt very angry when he learned that she was released from the psychiatric clinic. Many people in society also agree with Dale. They believe the killer of 2 sons should be imprisoned or face the death penalty. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Canion Kingi. Canion Kingi was born in New Zealand on December 16, 1974. When she was 7, her family moved to New Zealand, a small coastal town in Australia with a population of about 5,000. The area is known for its warm, pleasant climate. From a young age, Canion was a kind and gentle person who loved sports, particularly ballet and netball. Although she was naturally modest, she had a charming personality that made her popular among her peers. Canion was tall, had long blonde hair and striking eyes, which helped her stand out in school. Unfortunately, her beautiful appearance eventually led to serious consequences in her life. Friday, November 27, 1987, was an ordinary day. It was a beautiful sunny day. Typically, this time of year features perfect weather, warm sun and a cool breeze, so many locals were enjoying the beach. Canion's mother, Linda, went to the store to buy food and fabric to sew a lovely outfit for her daughter's upcoming birthday. After school, Canion got on her yellow bike, knowing she was going to the store to help her mother Linda choose fabric. Linda wanted to select something Canion would love, so she headed to the store right after classes ended. Once they chose the fabric for the dress, they were only free in the afternoon. After making their purchases, Linda planned to stop by the bakery to buy some treats for dinner. Sion was already feeling tired and wanted to head home. She asked her mother if she could go home by herself first. Her mother agreed, and Sion rode her bike along her favorite shortcut. While she had taken this route many times before, it didn't feel as safe today. In the 1980s, New York was a peaceful small town where everyone knew each other, making it one of the safest places in the area. The Kingi family's home was only a few kilometers from the local store, they easily reachable by bike in just a few minutes. Linda felt secure allowing her 12-year-old daughter, Sion, to ride there alone, as nothing bad had ever happened in their quiet town. In fact, her mother would follow her right after buying a few things. At 4:45 p.m., Sion rode her bike toward home, taking a path that went through the park, while Linda drove a different route in her car. Since Sion wasn't biking too quickly, she and her mother were only a few minutes apart. Linda anticipated arriving home just after Sion. However, when returned, Linda found no one at home. Sion was not there, and her yellow bicycle was missing. Initially, Linda wasn't worried about Sion's absence. The girl might have met a friend or stopped by to visit someone, especially with the weekend approaching after a long school week. Teenagers often hang out after classes, and Sion had many friends, so it was normal for her to drop in on someone. Sion had just picked out a beautiful fabric with her mother, Linda, and she could have wanted to share her weekend plans with a friend, as they were also planning to meet up. However, Linda soon began to feel anxious. Sion was well-behaved and never stayed out long without permission. Then, Linda decided to call several of Sion's friends to check if she was with them. To her dismay, no one had seen Sion. By 8 p.m., Sion still hadn't returned home. Although they lived in a small, quiet town with little traffic, Sion always respected the curfew and never wandered outside after dark. On Friday evenings, people often relax and take walks after work. As darkness falls, even the safest towns can become risky. Linda recognized this, so she chose to walk the route that Sion typically took on her bike. This path was the quickest way from their home on the outskirts to the shops in the city. Linda and her husband walked together, and about halfway there, they discovered Sion's yellow bicycle abandoned, but they did not see the girl. The abandoned bike raised concerns, especially since it was Sion's first bike, one she had cherished and would never willingly leave behind. Unfortunately, they couldn't find Sion nearby. Her parents called for her, but there was no answer. They decided to head to the police station. Before leaving, they checked their house to see if Sion had returned and bring a picture of her. With the photo in hand, they went to meet the police. The officers took their report about Sion's disappearance and officially declared her missing. The community was tight-knit, and the city had an extremely low crime rate, so everyone believed Sion would be found quickly. This situation seems to stem from a simple misunderstanding. Sion might have been hanging out with friends or got lost while walking in the forest. However, one officer recalled that there had been a kidnapping in the area shortly before this incident. To address the situation, the police reached out to local media, as they did not have access to social networks or the internet at the time. The following morning, a report about Sion's disappearance was broadcasted, in hopes of finding witnesses who might have seen her the night before. Several people came to the police station with information, but they all insisted they hadn't noticed anything suspicious. These witnesses had seen Linda and Sion while they were picking out fabric for a dress, but none of them saw Sion on their way home, and no one was on the path at that time. The witnesses provided varying details and tried to highlight any unusual occurrences, such as strange cars or odd behavior from local residents. However, they saw that was watching Linda and Sion. A witness reported seeing a dirty white station wagon on the evening of the incident. When police were notified, they discovered the car contained a dark-haired man and a heavy-set woman. They seemed to be aimlessly driving around, possibly searching for someone. It's conceivable that Sion might have come into contact with them. Witnesses noticed this suspicious couple shortly before Sion went missing. The police working on the case noted there were approximately 170,000 station wagons in the area, with about 10,000 of them being white. As a result, the search area has been much wider. Investigators needed to examine all the cars in the region and pursue additional leads. Many police officers and hundreds of volunteers joined the search. Friends, family, neighbors, and members of the community came together to assist in the search for Sion. Ground and air search teams were organized, and photographs of the location where Sion went missing were taken and shared with the media. This method is often used to help potential witnesses recall details about what happened that day. No one was able to provide useful information to the police at first. However, by Sunday, several new witnesses came forward and aided the investigation. The first witness was sunbathing by a stream in the forest when she was attacked by an unknown man. He harassed her and attempted to drag her into his car, which was identified as a white Kingwood station wagon. A second witness saw the incident and assisted the girl in fending off her attacker. Afterward, this witness followed the suspicious vehicle when the driver tried to flee the scene, but he eventually lost sight of them. He managed to give a detailed description of the car and provided the police with its license plate number, 429. The detectives decided to check the phone number associated with the car with that plate number. They found that this number was registered in the area. It belonged to a woman named Valmay Beck. The detectives quickly located her address and visited her home. A man answered the door and confirmed he knew Valmay. He explained that he was not her relative, but her stepson. He also added that her husband knew was Barry, and they had been married for a year. The description of Barry's closely matched the composite sketch created from the witness's account of the attack near the stream. The suspect's name was Barry Watts. However, the police lacked sufficient evidence to arrest him or accuse him of kidnapping Sion. Despite this, both Barry and Valmay were viewed as potential suspects in the case. Unfortunately, the man didn't know Barry and Valmay's whereabouts. They frequently moved and rented different places, which seemed suspicious. 3 days after Sion disappeared, another witness came forward with information. This witness also reported seeing a white Holden Kingwood near the creek and described the driver as athletic, mentioning a plump woman who was acting suspiciously. After conducting a background check on Barry and Valmay, the police discovered that both had recently been released from prison in Perth, Western Australia, right before Sion went missing. Both Barry and Valmay had extensive criminal records. Just weeks prior, they relocated to Queensland from Perth, pausing their criminal activities after serving their parole. They arrived in a sedan but quickly switched to a white station wagon, which had been linked to several suspicious incidents. The police recognized that they were dealing with dangerous individuals with a long history of armed robberies, break-ins, and forgery related to obtaining fraudulent documents. This was just a portion of Barry and Valmay's criminal history. This news was alarming for the Sion family. If their daughter, Sion, became involved with these individuals, her chances of being found alive and safe were slim. At the time, Barry was 33 years old, and Valmay was 43. Valmay had 6 children from previous relationships. Both police and Sion's family viewed Barry and Valmay as particularly dangerous criminal wanted. The authorities urgently needed to locate them to investigate their connection to Sion's disappearance. 6 days after Sion went missing, a man named Tim visited the police station to report bad news. He reported that the night before, as he was heading to work, he noticed a terrible, foul smell that initially made him think an animal had died nearby. On his way back, he felt compelled to check the area again and was hit by a strong smell of decay. At the side of the road near the stream, he discovered the body of a teenage girl. She was wearing a school uniform and had blonde hair. The police quickly arrived at the location provided by Tim and discovered the mutilated body of a schoolgirl. It was evident that she had been sexually assaulted. The autopsy revealed that she had been strangled, and her body had 12 stab wounds, 3 near her heart and 2 cuts on her throat. Additionally, her spine was broken, and her arms were so badly damaged they were nearly severed from her body. The level of violence indicated that her death was extremely painful. The police suspected that this victim was the missing girl, Sion. She was wearing the same clothes as described by Sion's mother. In the laboratory, a forensic expert confirmed that the victim was 12 years old Canion Kingi. 5 days after this gruesome discovery, family Sion's and friends came together to say their final goodbyes at her funeral. During the ceremony, a classmate read a passage from Peter Pan, suggesting that the girl would always be remembered. Flowers were placed along the route where the young girl had been found. Following media coverage of the incident, a nurse named Nicole Close contacted the police. She reported having seen some suspicious individuals in the area, they driving a white station wagon. One evening, after finishing her shift at the hospital, Nicole was walking through the parking lot to her car when she noticed a white car entering the lot and slowly approaching her. Sensing something was off, she quickly ran to her car, jumped inside, and locked the door. The station wagon did not back away but parked next to her passenger door. A man then got out and approached her window, asking for help with directions. Although he seemed calm and friendly, but she felt uneasy and wanted to end the conversation quickly. She noticed a suspicious-looking woman in the station wagon and thought she saw ropes in the back, which heightened her anxiety. The man continued to speak politely and stepping closer. Despite Nicole explaining the directions multiple times, he kept asking the same question and moved closer to her. Just as he was only a few steps away, Nicole spotted another man walking through the parking lot. The driver noticed him too, which distracted him and gave Nicole the chance to escape. She quickly backed into her car, locked the door, and drove away. Nicole recalled that this incident occurred on November 2nd, before Sion went missing. Investigators viewed the reports about the white car as significant and pursued this lead. Detectives showed Nicole a lineup of photographs featuring unfamiliar faces, and she clearly identified Barry and Valmay. But the testimonies didn't end there. The day after Nicole spoke to the police, another eyewitness came forward with information about a different attempted kidnapping. He reported seeing a man attack a woman on the street, holding a knife to her throat and trying to drag her into a white station wagon. The victim fought back, injuring the attacker's hand with his own knife, and managed to escape. Police then discovered fingerprints belonging to Barry on the woman's car. She also identified Barry and Valmay as likely involved in kidnappings, rapes, and murders in the area. The officers recognized that they were dealing with particularly dangerous criminals who posed a threat to the entire community. They issued descriptions of the suspects, Barry and Valmay, and their white car, making the information public through the media. Although it seemed the criminals were in hiding, but arrest warrants have been sent to police departments nationwide, indicating the possibility that they will be caught soon. In a small town, a local power grid worker was installing wiring when he spotted a car that matched the description of Barry and Valmay's station wagon. He remembered it because of a media alert he had seen a few days earlier. After coming down from his work, he was convinced that this was the car the police were looking for. He quickly went to the police station to mark the location on a map where he had seen the vehicle. When the patrol officers arrived, Barry and Valmay had already fled. Although the police tried to chase them, they lost track of Barry and Valmay once again. Later, the department received a tip about a money transfer made by Barry and Valmay as they were leaving New South Wales. The station wagon was tracked to a motel parking lot, and fortunately, it was still there when the police arrived. The hotel staff allowed the officers to access Barry and Valmey's room. Understanding that they were dealing with potentially armed and dangerous criminals, the officers prepared their weapons. To their surprise, Barry and Valmey did not put up a fight and were arrested in the motel room. The police discovered wigs, hair dye, and a hair clipper, suggesting that they was attempting to change their appearance to evade capture. The suspects, Barry and Valmey, were interrogated for about 12 hours, during which they remained completely silent. Barry did not cooperate at all. He informed the police that he had conspired with his wife. Valmey, to ensure she maintained the same story and did not reveal any important information. In contrast, Valmey quickly gave in. She thought that by doing so, she could reduce her sentence. What she revealed to the authorities was chilling. On November 27th, Valmey claimed that she and Barry were driving around the city in search of a new victim. Barry had an obsession with violence against women, particularly targeting those who were much younger than him. His wife, Valmey, being 10 years older, did not fit his preferences. To fulfill his disturbing desires, Barry started to rape and murder girls who fit his idea of youth and beauty. Valmey claimed she went along with his actions because she was afraid of losing him. On the morning of Sion's disappearance, they spent several hours driving around, believing that finding a girl would be easy. However, most of the girls were with others, making it difficult to kidnap someone discreetly. Barry attempted to approach a number of girls himself, but they managed to evade him. Eventually, he realized that he was not as trustworthy as his wife, so he decided to use Valmey as bait to attract the girls. They parked near a local park and got out of the car. While walking along the trail, they noticed a girl on a yellow bicycle. Barry selected her as his target, and Valmey pretended to be in distress, asking the girl for help because she was having trouble with her dog. Sion, a kind-hearted girl, came Valmey and engaging in conversation. At that moment, Barry attacked Sion from behind, muffling her screams and dragging her into his dirty car. Inside, he restrained her with tape. Valmey sat in the back seat with Sion, while Barry drove away. They traveled 12 kilometers from where the abduction occurred and stopped in a forest. There, Barry laid out a blanket and started raping Sion for several hours, fulfilling his twisted desires. Valmey later reported that Sion showed incredible courage throughout the process of being raped by Barry, she enduring the abuse without crying. She complied with Barry's demands, hoping her obedience would somehow spare her life and that they might let her go. However, from the start, Barry never planned to let her live. His intent was to satisfy his twisted fantasies. Barry started to strangle the Sion and stabbed her with a knife, causing fatal injuries. Throughout this horrific scene, Valmey watched without intervening. She later reported that the belt used for strangling Sion, along with the knife and other items, were discarded nearby in a stream. The police went to the specified location, and Valmey provided them with details about the crime scene. They were able to recover evidence, including light-colored hair that seemed to belong to Sion. Valmey's confession took up 28 pages, describing the terrible ordeal the young victim Sion endured before her death. Although Barry remained unyielding during the interrogation, he became enraged upon learning of his wife's confession, Valmey. To ensure Barry was convicted, investigators attempted to extract a confession from him. However, they were unable to do so. As a result, they decided to use a complex strategy. They planned to place an undercover agent in the temporary detention cell where Barry was held. This spy will spend time with Barry as a fellow prisoner, aiming to establish a friendly relationship with him, which will hopefully lead to receiving a confession from him. A special spy was chosen for this dangerous mission because he was able to withstand the psychological pressure that the mission would cause. He was supposed to listen to Barry confess about the brutal treatment of Sion. But ultimately, this mission did not result in a confession. Meanwhile, Barry remained agitated and was desperately trying to escape punishment. During one meeting with his wife, Valmay, he subtly suggested that she should end her life before the trial to avoid testifying against him. He implied that if she chose not to, she would face serious consequences according to state law. Barry communicated with his wife very cautiously, carefully choosing his words to prevent the authorities from using their phone conversations against him. Fortunately, Valmay did not listen to Barry, which ultimately saved her life. When Barry and Valmay arrived at court, around 200 people were present, ready to confront the brutal murderers. During the trial, Valmay testified against her husband, Barry, portraying him as a true monster. She tried to defend herself by claiming she was coerced into the horrific acts. However, there was strong evidence suggesting she participated willingly. On October 20, 1988, the jury began deliberating on the verdict. After 3 hours, the jurors found the defendants Barry and Valmay guilty. Valmay Beck received a sentence of 10 years for kidnapping and life in prison for murder. However, due to her cooperation with the prosecution, she was granted the possibility of temporary release. The jury spent 6 hours discussing Barry's sentence. Finally, Barry Watts was found guilty of murder, kidnapping, and rape, receiving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. His case was officially archived, meaning he would not be eligible for release. However, the story of Barry and Valmay didn't end in prison. Barry started bragging about his crimes and told a cellmate that he had committed a similar offense. He mentioned the murder of 31-year-old teacher, Helen Marie Fenney, who went missing on October 29 of that year. Investigators later discovered that Valmay was also involved in this incident. Valmay admitted to witnessing her husband murder the teacher Helen, after which they placed her body in the trunk of their car and disposed of it in a landfill near Brisbane. Barry remained silent during police questioning, refusing to provide any information about the second victim, Helen. He seemed to hope to challenge the verdict in Sion's case in the future. However, in 2007, he confessed to murdering Sion and detailing the crime. Valmay endured assaults while in her cell, suffering regular beatings, including a severe head injury from a tin can. To ensure her safety, she was transferred to a more secure correctional facility. During her time there, she converted to Christianity and started to make positive changes in her life. Valmay applied for parole 3 times but was denied each time. In 2007, she divorced her husband, Barry. She also struggled with serious health issues, such as obesity and diabetes. In 2008, her health declined significantly, leading doctors to place her in an induced coma immediately after heart surgery. The police hoped that while she was on her deathbed, she would confess to additional crimes that she and Barry was suspected of, including numerous kidnappings, rapes, and murders in the area. Sadly, she passed away at the age of 64 without regaining consciousness, taking with her all the secrets of their horrific crimes. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Emily Longley. Emily Longley was born in England in 1994 to parents Mark and Caroline Longley. 2 years later, she welcomed her younger sister, Hannah. The sisters enjoyed a close relationship while growing up in a loving family. When Emily was 9 and Hannah was 7, the family relocated to Auckland, New Zealand. Unfortunately, after Emily began associating with the wrong crowd, her parents chose to send her back to the UK to live with her grandparents and start anew. In 2010, Emily traveled to England to study at Brockenhurst College. Her goal was to earn a business degree, and she aspired to be a model. While in England, she stayed at her grandparents' house in Bournemouth, a popular resort town located on the coast of the English Channel, near Poole. At the time of her move, Emily's sister Hannah was still in school. Their parents, Mark and Caroline, had divorced but continued to have a friendly relationship. Emily was a beautiful young woman who drew a lot of attention. One day, she met 20-year-old Elliot Turner, and he left a lasting impression on her. Over time, their communication developed into a romantic relationship. In April 2011, Emily traveled back to New Zealand to visit her family, whom she hadn't seen in 6 months. Her father greeted her at the airport, and she rushed to him, hugging him tightly and expressing how much she missed him. Emily shared that she had a very close bond with her father, who adored her and missed her smile, laughter, and playful jokes. The next day, the entire family visited Emily's favorite pizzeria. She shared with her parents that, in addition to her college studies, she was involved in modeling and had made some amazing friends. She also talked about her boyfriend, 20-year-old Elliot. Although they had only been dating for a few months, Emily felt she was too young for a serious relationship. "I think I'm going to break up with him when I return," she said. Over the following weeks, Emily enjoyed spending time with friends and family, creating great memories. No one realized that they would soon lose her. When Emily's flight began boarding, she found it difficult to say goodbye to her family. She promised them she would return in 5 months. During that time, she was excited to watch the Rugby World Cup starting on September 9th. A few days later, while texting her father, Emily mentioned that she had broken up with Elliot, but she chose not to share specific details. Elliot had been acting oddly after seeing photos Emily posted on social media from New Zealand, particularly because there were other guys in the pictures, which made him very jealous. Elliot Turner, a 20-year-old from a wealthy jewelry family, appeared to live a carefree life. He was well known in the bar and club scenes of Bournemouth and Poole and was part of a group of affluent young men known as the Firm. His friends nicknamed him All Talk Turner due to his tendency to brag. In December 2010, he met Emily, and they enjoyed a lavish lifestyle together, often staying out late. However, Elliot, who had a history of being obsessed with women, quickly became jealous, leading to frequent violent arguments in their relationship. People described him as threatening, aggressive, controlling, and possessive. In January 2008, when Elliot was 16 years old, the police sent him a warning letter about harassment. They advised him not to contact his ex-girlfriend after he inundated her with text messages and emails following their breakup. Elliot enjoyed being the center of attention and did not have to work since his parents financially supported him. He was skilled at manipulating others, including his parents, and his life centered on parties, women, alcohol, and drugs. He believed he was capable of doing anything he desired. Elliot always carries a hammer with him to intimidate anyone who might challenge him. His friends thought Elliot fancied himself a gangster. Elliot would often buy drinks for everyone at the bar. Elliot liked to brag about owning a new Mini Cooper, but it was actually a gift from his grandmother. He attempted to maintain his tough guy persona by posting streetwise messages on social media, where he often called himself Scarface or God. Although he attracted a lot of female attention, he became very attached to Emily when he met her. She praised his image as a successful person, something he worked hard to achieve. As their relationship progressed, Elliot began to display increasingly controlling behavior. He even threatened Emily, saying he would take her life. Emily wrote an emotional note to Elliot expressing her feelings. 1. I love you. 2. Please don't say you'll kill me. 3. Stop bringing up your ex-girlfriends. 4. Stop being so aggressive. Relax a bit, because that is much more attractive, and you scare me because you're so intimidating. As Elliot revealed his true nature and his controlling behavior escalated to an unacceptable level, Emily understood that he was not the right person for her. Then she decided to break up with him. Unfortunately, individuals like Elliot often cannot accept rejection. On the evening of May 6, 2011, Emily was out with friends at an entertainment venue. Surveillance footage showed her arriving at the nightclub with them. In another development, Elliot checked Emily's Facebook messages and found out she was seeing another man, which made him extremely angry. He went to the club and confronted Emily, leading to an argument. The situation escalated when Emily threw her drink at him. Elliot reacted by verbally abusing her and making threats of violence. He disapproved of Emily's outfit, claiming it was too revealing, and ignored the fact that they had broken up. Unwilling to accept the breakup, he continued to follow her after she decided to leave. His friends heard him say that he would kill her, that he would go to prison for it and still be a millionaire, and that serving 10 years in prison wouldn't bother him. Elliot convinced Emily to come to his house, saying he wanted to talk more relaxed. Elliot lived with his parents, which may have made Emily feel more at ease, thinking he would behave better around them. Neighbors observed them entering the house. The next morning, Anita Turner, Elliot's mother, called emergency services, reporting that Emily was unresponsive. The ambulance arrived around 9 a.m. Anita followed the nurse's instructions to help Emily, but unfortunately, when the paramedics arrived, they could only confirm Emily Longley had died. Anita, an Indonesian citizen, moved to the UK to marry Lee Turner. When they had a son, they gave him everything he wanted, which turned out to be a serious mistake. During a call with emergency services, Anita seemed surprisingly calm for a mother who had just discovered her son's girlfriend dead. Her demeanor was unsettlingly normal. Meanwhile, in New Zealand, Emily's father, Mark, woke up at 2 a.m. to find numerous missed calls from his ex-wife Caroline and their younger daughter Hannah. He also had a voicemail from Hannah, but she was talking something that difficult to understand. Then he heard Caroline screaming in the background, saying, "Emily is dead." Mark was in disbelief. He immediately called his mother in England. When she answered, his world shattered. She was crying uncontrollably. Soon after, a police officer took the phone and said, "I'm sorry to inform you that your daughter Emily is dead." Mark was stunned. Just a week ago, Emily had been on his couch, smiling. As he flew to the UK, the grieving father struggled to accept that his daughter was truly gone. Sadly, it was no dream. The loss of their eldest daughter was an immense heartbreak for Emily's parents. The police informed them that Emily had passed away in her sleep, which didn't make sense to them since she was so young and healthy. While the police gathered some evidence, the circumstances surrounding Emily's death remained unclear, and they would have to wait for the autopsy results. Elliot Turner's parents, Anita and Lee, told investigators that they had been at home all night and had not heard anything unusual. Meanwhile, Elliot shared his sorrow for Emily on social media by posting photos of them together. The police found no solid evidence to contradict the Turners' claim that Emily had mysteriously died in her sleep. In any death investigation, the crucial task is to determine the cause of death. Identifying the cause helps investigators understand the situation and how to approach the investigation. While they awaited the autopsy results, investigators discovered that a few days before her death, Emily had posted a concerning message on her Facebook page, stating that she had a stalker. Emily detailed in phone calls she received, saying that someone had called her, and when she had asked who it was, they replied that she didn't know them, but they knew everything about her. She had asked how they got her number, and they said they would tell her when they saw her, while persistently asking her out. Emily had hung up, but they kept calling. She made this post on Thursday, May 5th. The police discovered that before her death, Emily had a heated argument with Elliot in front of other patrons at the nightclub. Interrogation with Elliot's friends revealed that he attempted to control Emily's actions and had learned about her meeting with another man. Most alarmingly, they mentioned that Elliot had threatened her life multiple times. However, his friends dismissed these threats, believing they were merely bravado to enhance his gangster image. The autopsy did not determine a definitive cause of death, but experts suggested that strangulation might have occurred, noting that the physical evidence was consistent with pressure applied to the neck. The investigators suspected that a member of the Turner family might be involved in Emily's death, which prompted them to install listening devices in their home. The police aimed to uncover any hidden information, and their suspicions were confirmed. One recording revealed that Elliot was advising his mother on how to interact with the police and what she should say. Lee Turner, Elliot's father, seemed to be the only one aware of the wrongdoing in their actions, but he eventually succumbed to the demands of his son and wife. While reviewing the recordings, investigators discovered details about Emily Longley's death. Elliot Turner confessed to causing her death, leading to his arrest a week later. Although he denied his guilt, his lawyers attempted to dispute the validity of the audio recordings. After thoroughly examining the case, the judge permitted the prosecution to present the recordings as evidence. Unaware that the police were listening, Elliot revealed that he felt angry every day and that Emily had upset him more than anyone else ever had. During the trial in May 2012, Elliot's lawyer argued that he acted in self-defense. Turner explained that a fight in his bedroom escalated, leading him to grab Emily by the neck. He insisted that he did not strangle her and claimed he discovered her dead in his bed the next morning. On the second day of the trial, Elliot expressed his disgust with his actions that night. It was reported that after finding Emily dead, he wrote a letter to his mother expressing his shame and mentioning that he was planning to leave for Spain. This suggests that Elliot intended to leave the country on the day Emily died but ultimately changed his mind for some unknown reason. When the police arrived at his house after receiving a call, they found packed bags, and Elliot had his passport in his pocket. In court, he admitted that he had threatened Emily and felt upset and deceived the night before her death after seeing emails on her phone. He claimed he had forcefully pushed her face into a table and recounted the fight they had before her death, stating that Emily began hitting him with her hands and feet. He attempted to calm her down but eventually gave up. When asked if he planned to kill Emily, Elliot said no. He claimed he thought Emily was asleep and only realized she was dead when she didn't wake up the next morning. In an interview with the Herald newspaper, Emily's father, Mark, expressed the pain of losing his daughter. The reality of death is that it's incredibly difficult. It doesn't matter if it's your child, partner, or even your 99-year-old grandmother. It's painful when someone is here one day and gone the next. This is something we struggle to cope with. All anniversaries are tough, birthdays are tough, Christmas is tough, and Easter is especially hard because that was the last time I truly spent time with her, Mark Longley shared. He shared that the hardest part is knowing he will never see the woman she could have been. I miss watching the life she was denied develop. We had a small but beautiful glimpse of the woman she was becoming, and I felt so proud of her. As her father, I'm naturally biased, but the world truly was a better and more enjoyable place with her in it. During the trial, Elliot Turner was depicted as a privileged young man whose parents tried to protect him from facing consequences. The court revealed that he had free access to his family's home in the wealthy Queen's Park neighborhood of Bournemouth. There, he hosted wild parties for his middle-class friends, as described by his father, Lee. To ensure he didn't bother them, his parents allowed him to use a converted garage as his own living space, giving him the freedom to come and go as he pleased. It was in this room, equipped with a mini bar, that he strangled Emily while they were on his bed. The jury quickly dispelled any illusions Elliot had when they found him guilty on May 22, 2012. The court sentenced him to life in prison, with a minimum term of 16 years. While delivering the verdict, Mrs. Justice Dost described Elliot as arrogant, stating, "Emily was a lovely girl who brought joy to others. You extinguished that light. You didn't love her, she was a trophy to you. The relationship was about your control through aggression and threats. Focus on your life sentence instead of luxury." She also sentenced Elliot to 9 months for perverting justice, to run concurrently. Elliot Turner wasn't the only one involved in the trial. His parents, Anita and Lee, were also implicated. They loved their son and tried to protect him after he committed his crime. Lee destroyed a letter in which Elliot confessed, while Anita removed a jacket from the room where the letter was supposedly found. Additionally, Anita delayed calling for an ambulance, allowing Elliot time to hide evidence and let the family create a credible story for the police. When questioned about her decision to postpone the call, Anita stated that she didn't believe Emily was dead. During cross-examination, they asked her if she believed Emily had ruined her son's life. After a 6-second pause, she answered, no. In the recording, Lee inquired whether they had made the right decision. Anita responded, "We've done the right thing." Both Anita Turner, 51, and Lee Turner, 54, were found guilty of obstructing justice and received sentences of 27 months in prison. In 2013, after serving half of their sentence, they continue to live in the house where Emily tragically died. Emily's father, Mark, broke down while discussing the verdicts. With support from his ex-wife Caroline and daughter Hannah, he expressed, "What we have heard over these 5 weeks has shocked and disgusted us. It is beyond belief that a man as evil as Elliot could treat such a gentle and loving girl like Emily so violently. We are incredibly proud that she came all the way across the world to seek a better life for herself. Unfortunately, this is the life that Elliot chose to take from her." Mark mentioned that there was much discussion about Elliot's bragging, and no one took his threat seriously until it was too late. He noted that even his mother dismissed it when he texted her about his intention to harm Emily. In October 2020, reports emerged that Elliot Turner's cellmates had assaulted him in prison. This incident followed his decision to display photos of Emily in his cell and brag about receiving letters from female admirers. The attack was triggered after he claimed he would soon go back to his luxurious lifestyle filled with champagne, Bentleys, and attractive women. In 5 years, Elliot Turner will be eligible to apply for early release. We can only hope that the parole board will act wisely and make the right choice concerning someone who has shown no remorse for his actions. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Madison Sparrow. Madison Elizabeth Sparrow was born on September 12, 2003, in Norfolk, Virginia, United States. She is the daughter of Heather Sparrow Murphy and Richard Prestige. In her family, Madison has older sisters Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn, who was born in 1999 in Durango, Colorado, is Madison's older sister from her father's previous relationship. The family later settled in Newark, Newcastle County, Delaware. On October 5, 2010, her family welcomed a new member, baby Molly. Madison loves children and often takes on the role of the eldest in the family, which includes 8 cousins. She enjoys doing things that make people happy and frequently spends time playing with children or participating in entertainment shows such as magic shows. It is easy to catch Madison in a happy moment. Her laughter is contagious, showing her youthful and cheerful spirit. However, Madison can also be thoughtful and dreamy at times. Madison's father said that since she was a child, she has displayed her wisdom through careful observation and reflection before making decisions. Additionally, she is a very emotional person. Her warm hugs can uplift anyone's mood. For her friends and family, Madison is always a reliable confidant who genuinely cares about the happiness of those she loves. Madison is a curious girl who loves to explore new things, which led her to join the Girl Scouts, an organization for girls around the world. By the fall of 2012, all the Girl Scout troops were full, but thanks to her mother's efforts, Madison was able to join a group. Madison's mother led a new Brownies troop, and Madison joined at age 9. In recent years, Madison has become one of the top cookie sellers, winning numerous medals for her impressive sales. She has been involved with the Girl Scouts for nearly 10 years, during which time she has built a strong network of friendships. Currently, Madison volunteers with her younger SI. Stir Molly's troop, as she enjoys working with other young people and making a positive impact on their lives. Madison is a kind and generous girl who acts with commitment to her faith in God and service to her country. She is passionate about helping others and strictly adheres to the principles of the Girl Scouts. However, like any other young girl, Madison also enjoys spending time having fun and living life to the fullest. Even in her teenage years, she is always the life of the parties. She often plans parties with her friends, ranging from movie nights to full-blown beauty parties with manicures and pedicures. Madison frequently stays up all night, so it is not unusual for her to struggle to wake up by noon the next day. Before finishing elementary school, Madison met Annika Stalczynski, a girl her age who was born in Newark on July 9, 2003. They quickly became close friends and studied for exams together. Information about Annika's life is limited, but it is known that her parents are Robert Stalczynski and Robin Kars. In 2004, her family lived on Arona Mink Drive in Newark. After finishing elementary school, Annika and Madison went to middle school, where they made a new friend named Noah Sharp. Noah, a native of Newark, was born on August 23, 2001. Little is known about Noah's family and background, except that his mother, Nikki Sharp, has two other children, David and Brianna. The trio often went out for ice cream or spent time in the large green spaces around the city. When Noah and Madison met by chance, they felt an attraction to each other, and after just a few months, a teenage romance developed. At first, they were madly in love, but in early 2020, after more than a year together, Madison decided to break up with Noah without providing any reasons. They parted ways amicably and agreed to remain friends, but Noah was heartbroken because he still loved her deeply. During this time, Annika became Noah's trusted friend. They began to see each other more often and text almost every day. Although Noah's heart was still broken, he began dating another girl after a while. Despite his relationship with Annika, Noah kept in touch with Madison. He visited Madison on her 17th birthday, September 12, 2020, and brought her a gift. It seemed that Noah was still upset about the breakup. When Annika learned about her boyfriend's meeting with his ex-girlfriend, she felt jealous. She could not accept that he was still friends with his ex. Noah's sadness also turned to anger. He wanted to hurt Madison because he felt hurt. The following week, blinded by hatred and jealousy, Annika and Noah began planning to end Madison's life. They exchanged text messages, used FaceTime, and met in person to discuss weapons and how to dispose of the body after the crime. The messages they sent each other while planning the attack were horrifying and revealed their intention to cause Madison great pain. Annika made several suggestions, including using a knife to inflict serious damage to her heart. They also discussed the possibility of using a handgun or another blunt object. According to official documents, they quickly dismissed the idea of a handgun because it would make too much noise. Although Noah was not entirely confident, they decided to use a blunt object. During their discussions, they calculated the number of bricks they would need to hold Madison's body underwater if they decided to dump her there. When in doubt, one idea was to bury her since Noah could dig a hole and knew where to find a shovel. Eventually, they came up with what they believed was the perfect plan. Madison was an ice cream lover and also cherished Halloween. She eagerly awaited October each year to celebrate her favorite holiday. Throughout the month, Annika had been studying Madison's interests and taking advantage of them. On Friday, October 2, 2020, she called Madison to ask her out for ice cream and to spend a day together. Madison agreed because she hadn't seen her friend in a long time and also wanted to buy a gift for Molly, whose birthday was just 3 days away. That day, Madison wore black tights, denim shorts, gray boots, a blue sweatshirt that said New Jersey, and white ghost earrings. She rarely wore jewelry, especially earrings, but since she didn't have much time to prepare for Halloween, Madison decided to buy these earrings to match the holiday. At 2:44 p.m., she said goodbye to her mother, Heather, promised to see her later, and then left. Although nothing unusual happened at that time, the events that followed were extremely unsettling. That was the last time her mother saw her alive. Just hours later, Heather began receiving abusive text messages from Madison's phone number, along with information suggesting that Madison was supposed to be leaving the country. Heather thought it was a joke. She replied and wished Madison good luck in her endeavor, joking that she had forgotten to bring her passport, which was in the safe. However, Heather received no response. Even when she called her daughter, no one answered. Heather, who was hanging out with Molly and taking her to scout meetings and swimming lessons, was confused. The lack of response began to worry her. Heather decided to call Annika, knowing that they would meet later in the day. When Annika answered, she burst into tears and explained that Madison had insulted her and that she had dropped her off near a store. Annika then suggested contacting Noah, but he did not respond. Frustrated, Heather asked Annika to contact Noah again. The three of them chatted but did not get any information. Frustrated, Heather decided to go home. On the way home, Heather received several messages from her daughter's friends, who had also received strange messages and wanted to know what was going on. When she got home and did not search for any clues, Heather found no signs that her daughter had run away. Even the money she had received for her birthday, her clothes, and her Reddit cards were in her room. These messages were strange and nonsensical. Madison had no reason to run away, especially without a bag containing her clothes and money. When Madison did not return home at around 8:30 p.m., Heather contacted 911 and reported her daughter missing. Despite repeated attempts to reach out to people, all her efforts were in vain. After being informed of the situation, Heather's parents traveled from another city to support their daughter. Furthermore, she notified Madison's father, with whom she had divorced, who now lived in Colorado. He quickly shared the information on social media, calling for help in finding his daughter. On Saturday, October 3, 2020, the search for Madison, 17, who was reported missing, continued. Delaware State Police issued a yellow alert to activate all necessary procedures to search for missing persons. Over the course of 2 days, police search teams, family and friends searched farms near the University of Delaware, where Madison was last seen. The media also disseminated information about the search, asking people to come forward with any details. Delaware State Police have begun questioning Madison's friends, and evidence points to her ex-boyfriend as a suspect. According to information, the girl went to the woods in Newark behind the elementary school, where she was also seen with Noah on the day she went missing. Detectives then detained and questioned him for nearly 9 hours from October 4th to 5th, but he claimed he had no idea what had happened. He eventually confessed to his actions and revealed that Annika was an accomplice. He explained that Annika hated Madison because she was jealous of their relationship. He also shared his deep feelings about breaking up with her. According to Noah's testimony, he drove Madison to the woods behind the elementary school, then hid behind the bushes with an aluminum baseball bat. As Madison happily walked along the trail, he suddenly emerged from his hiding place and hit Madison twice in the head. Noah admitted to putting all his strength into the second blow, adding that it was then that he became enraged after months of losing control over the girl who had broken his heart. Unable to control himself, he continued to strike her body multiple times. After the attack, the two used Annika's car to transport her body to a location near the intersection of I-95 and the Delaware state line, about 15 minutes away from the scene and near a warehouse. Once there, they attempted to drown the body in the river. Unsuccessful, they opted to bury it in a shallow grave they dug in the same location. Armed with detailed information from the suspect, investigators carefully searched the designated area. There, they discovered an aluminum baseball bat used as a weapon, with traces of blood. The crime scene also revealed the victim's clothing, with some items showing evidence of having been burned. The suspect then led law enforcement to a large plot of land near the intersection of I-95 and the Delaware state line, where he and his accomplice had secretly buried the body. On Monday, October 5, 2020, Corporal Heather Piper announced the discovery of Madison's body. The news sent shockwaves through the victim's family, friends, and community. Several days later, on Saturday, October 9th, hundreds gathered at the high school football field to remember and honor Madison. An autopsy revealed that Madison died from blunt force trauma to the head. Experts also found the DNA of Noah and Annika on physical evidence collected at the scene and where the bodies were found. Noah faces charges of first-degree murder, possession of a deadly weapon during the commission of a felony, and first-degree conspiracy. He has been placed in a correctional facility on a $1 million bail. More than a month after the tragic event and after processing the necessary evidence, Annika, 17, was also arrested. She was indicted by a Newcastle County grand jury on charges of first-degree murder, possession of a deadly weapon during the commission of a felony, and first-degree conspiracy. Meanwhile, Madison's family has been struggling. Heather has repeatedly stated that the exact cause of her daughter's death may never be known. Although Noah admitted his guilt to the police, he did not plead guilty in his formal court filing. This has led to speculation that his defense attorney may argue that he was mentally unstable. In some cases, attorneys often attempt to defend their clients by referring to their mental health status. Similarly, during a preliminary hearing, Noah's attorney stated that Noah was being treated for schizophrenia and was under the care of a psychiatrist at the time of the murder. Noah's attorney confirmed that he had been injured in Chester County, Pennsylvania, about 3 weeks before the murder. The attorney explained that Noah had suffered memory loss and other problems as a result of the head injury. However, the attorney did not provide specific information about the cause and severity of the injury. In May 2021, Annika pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and first-degree conspiracy. Her attorneys negotiated with prosecutors, and Annika agreed to testify against Noah regarding his intention to kill Madison. Several people close to the victim had reported to the police about alter ego, Noah's alleged alter ego. However, prosecutors argued that Noah himself had disseminated this information, intending to use it at trial later as part of his plan to kill Madison. After 2 years of waiting, the defendant's trial began on October 20, 2022, in Newcastle County. During the proceedings, approximately 30 witnesses were called, primarily by Deputy Attorney General Matt Foley and an assistant prosecutor. The courtroom played hours of video recordings of Noah's interviews with state police detectives. Viewers heard Noah's changing story until he finally confessed. The defense tried to challenge this evidence, arguing that the police had interrogated their client for too long. Attorney Monica Jerome noted that the detectives interfered with the interrogation, directing Noah to say what they wanted and forcing him to say it. However, most people viewed this as a last-ditch effort to justify the murderer in any way possible. The prosecution presented text messages exchanged between Noah and Annika, which they claimed showed that the two had planned the crime. Faced with this evidence, the defense attempted to convince the court that someone else had control of the suspect's device and that he was not the one who contacted Annika. However, The testimonies of Noah's mother and brother contradicted each other several times when they were called to testify. Nikia stated that her son came home on the evening of October 2nd without being wet. Meanwhile, David said that his brother was wet and looked like he had just come out of a swamp. Nikia reported that when her son arrived home, Annika came in and seemed normal. David, on the other hand, claimed that Annika came in angry and slammed the door. Prosecutor Matt Froley asked Nikia if she had discussed the evidence against Noah with him, to which she replied no. However, prosecutors obtained a recording of a phone call that took place a month before the trial, in which the defendant and his mother discussed surveillance camera footage at the elementary school. During that conversation, Noah informed his mother that his face was not visible in the video showing him and Annika near the school an hour before Madison was murdered. His mother reacted with relief at this news. However, the video showed an African-American man of similar height and build to Noah, holding a baseball bat while walking into the woods with a girl. The defense questioned the defendant's relatives about the two injuries he allegedly sustained. The first was a head injury on September 13, 2020. The second was another unconfirmed injury he suffered after falling off his bike, just hours before his police interview on October 4th. Noah's lawyers argued that these injuries could have caused dissociative amnesia, attempting to justify the statements he made to the police. The court considered the arguments of both the prosecution and the defense regarding the victim's injuries. Annika, the accused, gave a 3-hour testimony that supported the prosecution's arguments. During her testimony, she calmly explained that Noah had convinced her that Madison had talked badly about her behind her back. However, Madison's family and friends insisted that she had never spoken ill of her friends. After 8 days of trial and more than 250 pieces of evidence presented by the prosecutors, the jury took just 3 hours to reach its final verdict. Noah Sharp was found guilty on all counts, including first-degree murder, and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. When the jury's verdict was announced, neither Noah nor his mother showed any emotion, Noah simply reneged and smiled at his mother. The Madison family cried tears of relief before leaving the courtroom. In Annika's case, when she was convicted, prosecutors stated that under Delaware law, she would be sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years, since she was a juvenile at the time of the crime. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Neha Varma. Megha Deshpande lived with her 21-year-old daughter, Ashlesha, and her 70-year-old mother, Rohini, in a luxurious neighborhood called Srinagar in Indor. This city known for consistently ranking as one of the cleanest in India. The fact that they resided in Srinagar, an area predominantly inhabited by the wealthy, suggested that the Deshpande family was financially well off. Megha worked for a multi-level marketing, MLM, company for a considerable time. MLM is also referred to as network marketing, direct selling, and pyramid selling. To understand how an MLM business works, imagine a pyramid structure. At the top is the company owner. When the owner recruits 2 individuals, and they join the company, it creates a network. These 2 individuals then recruit more people to join the company, and the process continues. The company generates profit from each new member or associate that joins, allowing the business owner to constantly earn income through the growth of their network. Before moving to Indor, Megha lived in Yuan, a city approximately 35 miles away, with her husband, Nanai Deshpande. However, due to his job as a bank manager, Nanai remained in Yuan, while Megha relocated to Indor with her daughter and mother a few months ago. Thanks to Nanai's stable job and Megha's successful career in the MLM company, the Megha's family has a stable financial situation and does not have to worry about money. In the neighborhood where Megha lives, people are very united and it is also very safe with very little crime. Residents have always felt safe, and nothing unusual has ever happened there until June 13, 2011, when that all changed. On that day, no one in Mega's family left the house until noon, and no one heard their voices. A neighbor walked by Mega's house, and then she noticed a very strange thing. Footprints made of bloody stains led around the house, alarming her. She quickly notified the landlord. And the landlord then knocked on the door several times, but received no answer. Next, the landlord attempted to look inside through a window and was met with a very scary sight. 3 women were lying on the floor, their bodies covered in blood. Overcome with fear, he quickly alerted the police. The brutal murder of the Mega family members sent shockwaves through the community. By the time the police arrived at the crime scene, a large crowd had gathered outside their house. Upon entering the house, the police officers were met with a gruesome scene: the bodies of 3 women who had been brutally murdered. The police secured the crime scene and began their investigation. During this process, they found 2 bullet shells inside the house. One of the shells was linked to the gunshot wound that killed Mega, who had been shot in the head. However, despite a thorough search of the house lobby, the police were unable to locate the second bullet. A forensic team was called in to collect evidence from the crime scene. The bodies of the 3 women were then sent for post-mortem examination. As news of the murder spread, the entire city of Indor was left reeling in shock. The post-mortem report later revealed that 21-year-old Ashlesha and her 70-year-old grandmother, Rohini, had died from excessive bleeding caused by multiple stab wounds inflicted on their bodies. This report confirms that Mega was the only one shot to death. However, it raises a crucial question for the police: if 2 bullet shells were found, who was the second shot intended for? Mega's husband, along with the public, also started pressuring the police, demanding that they solve the case quickly so that the criminals are held accountable to the fullest extent of Indian law. This makes it even more urgent for the police to solve this case quickly. To do this, several teams were deployed to investigate. One team analyzed the call detail records of the 3 victims, Mega, Ashlesha, Rohini. Another team re-examined the forensic evidence. Initially, the police have collected a blood sample from the crime scene that didn't belong to Mega, Ashlesha, or Rohini. The police then detained and questioned various suspects from the surrounding area. Based on the evidence collected, the police have recorded this as a robbery and murder case. Further investigation of the phone records revealed that there was a phone number that had called Mega multiple times, and she had long conversations with this number. After obtaining detailed information about the number, the police found it was registered to a girl named Neha. They then began tracking her location to gather potential leads in the case. One day, the police located Neha near an ATM in the area. They promptly sent a team to bring her to the police station for questioning. After being informed of the situation of the case, Neha was left astounded. She explained that she initially met Mega at a shopping mall. Then, Neha had bumped into Mega while rushing, causing Mega to drop some items. As Neha apologized and helped Mega gather her belongings, they engaged in conversation and developed a rapport. And Neha even driving Mega to her car, marking the start of their friendship. Neha also discovered that Mega worked for a multi-level marketing, MLM, company. After exchanging phone numbers, they occasionally spoke over the phone. Neha's interest in the MLM business model led her to discuss it with Mega. However, the police found Neha's story suspicious, as her words didn't match her body language. As a result, the police questioned her forcefully and in a confrontational manner. Neha initially tries to hide her dishonesty, but under intense police questioning, she confesses. She then told the police a story that even surprised them. Neha Varma was a 23-year-old beautician who was known for her beauty and cheerful personality. Her father, a van driver, had limited financial resources, making it challenging for Neha to pursue her dreams. During this time, Neha met Rahul, and they developed a close friendship that blossomed into romance. At 24, Rahul was handsome but also struggled financially. Despite their similar financial situations, they deeply loved each other and wanted to get married. They sought opportunities to rapidly build wealth and achieve a comfortable lifestyle, securing their financial future. Neha and Megha met for the first time. Megha, who had a taste for expensive jewelry, was wearing gold ornaments that day. Neha perceived Megha as wealthy due to her jewelry and decided to approach her. Neha started approaching Megha by deliberately bumping into her, start chatting and befriending her. Neha started thinking about robbing Megha after getting to call her through phone calls. Neha then shared her plan with her boyfriend Rahul, telling him that Megha was extremely wealthy, making her an easy target. Rahul liked the idea, as it would solve their financial problems and allow them to live comfortably once they were married. Following this, Rahul started making plans to kill Megha and the two other women in her house. He thought that if he could get away with the crime without anyone finding out, no one would be able to file a complaint against them. Rahul finalized his plan but needed a gun to carry it out. Luckily for him, his friend Manoj, who was close to both Rahul and Neha, had a gun. Rahul had been planning to kill Megha and her family, and he was waiting for the perfect moment to execute his plan. That moment arrived on June 13, 2011. On that day, Neha called Megha and expressed interest in joining her multi-level marketing scheme, MLM. Unbeknownst to Megha, this was a ruse orchestrated by Rahul. Neha arrived at Megha's house early in the morning, and Megha asked her to fill out a membership form. However, Neha didn't know what information to fill in the form, so she asked Megha if she could get a friend arrive to help her. Megha agreed, and Neha then called Rahul, as planned. Rahul and his accomplice, Manoj, were waiting for Neha's call, and they immediately went to Megha's house. Once Rahul entered the house, he pulled out a gun and shot Megha at point-blank range, killing her instantly. The sound of this gunshot reached Ashlesha and Rohini, causing both of them to run into the lobby. Rahul and Manoj initially intimidated Ashlesha and her grandmother Rohini, demanding Ashlesha's ATM card and PIN in exchange for their lives. Ashlesha, hoping to be spared, quickly handed over the card. However, Rahul and Manoj were aware that they had been seen, and this posed a risk to their. To eliminate witnesses, Rahul attempted to shoot Ashlesha but accidentally shot himself in the foot instead. Manoj then took a knife and brutally murdered both Ashlesha and Rohini. After the killings, the three thieves, including Neha, Rahul, Manoj, stole approximately 1 million Indian rupees and valuable jewelry worth up to $500,000 rupees and Ashlesha's ATM card. Rahul, along with Neha and Manoj, had planned to use the ATM card to withdraw cash. However, their plan failed when Neha was arrested by the police. Rahul to file an untrue report at the police station and was arrested, but was later hospitalized due to gunshot wounds. The police matched Rahul's blood sample from the crime scene to one taken from him. It was a match. The police quickly solved the case and arrested the suspects. Following a prolonged and contentious court case, the three defendants, Neha, Rahul, Manoj, were sentenced to death by hanging in December 2013. The district court handed down this severe punishment due to the heinous nature of the crime, in which the defendants killed women from 3 generations of the Megha family. Physical evidence, including blood-stained clothing, knives, and jewelry, was recovered from the defendants by the police. One of the defendants, Neha, is currently serving her sentence in the central jail. Notably, she has been teaching a beauty parlor course to fellow female inmates while incarcerated. This case was notable for being the first time the district court had imposed a death sentence on a woman. Neha and Rahul's desire for quick wealth led them to get involved in a life of crime. It is fortunate that the perpetrators were caught. If Mega had not worn her valuable jewelry to the mall and had not trusted a stranger she met there, the outcome may have been different. Mega's husband, Nana Deshpande, was pleased with the court's decision and praised the judiciary and the police for their efforts. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Neil Entwistle. Neil Entwistle was born on September 18, 1978, in Worksop, Nottinghamshire, England, to Clifford and Yvonne Entwistle. He grew up in a humble home with his younger brother, Russell. His father worked as a coal miner before becoming a labor counselor, while his mother worked as a cook in a school cafeteria. After finishing high school, Neil Entwistle enrolled in the University of York, where he studied electronic engineering and business management. During this time, Entwistle met an American student named Rachel Souza who was attending York as a study abroad student. Rachel was originally from the Kingston area in Massachusetts, had attended Silver Lake Region High School before going to Holy Cross College in Worcester. While studying abroad in York for a year, she met Neil Entwistle on the rowing team. Neil Entwistle was withdrawn, shy, and indecisive, rarely interacting with others. Rachel, on the other hand, exuded confidence, was cheerful, outgoing, and well-liked. Her American roots brought an undeniable charm to her personality, and Rachel was well received by the other members of the rowing team. Over time, Neil Entwistle and Rachel found themselves drawn to each other, eventually spending more and more time together. Benjamin Pryor, a close friend of Neil Entwistle and Rachel's since college, said the couple were very understanding, affectionate and caring towards each other. While Neil Entwistle worked at a defense and security technology company based in Malvern, Worcestershire, Rachel pursued a career in education after completing her studies in 2002. Rachel took up a teaching role in English, drama and theater studies at St. Augustine's Catholic High School in Redditch, nurturing young minds through the arts. In a post on Friends Reunited in June 2003, Neil Entwistle happily shared about his upcoming marriage to Rachel. They met through rowing, although he expressed dissatisfaction with life south of the border in Birmingham. He was happy with his upcoming marriage. In August 2003, Neil Entwistle and Rachel got married in 2 ceremonies, one in Plymouth, UK, and the other in Massachusetts, USA. After the US ceremony, they had a reception in the UK in November of the same year. Neil Entwistle shared the early days of their married life on a family website, including their Christmas 2004 trip to the Mediterranean. In April 2005, their daughter, Lillian Rose, was born. Neil Entwistle and Rachel decided to move to the United States. They initially lived with Rachel's mother and stepfather in Carver, Massachusetts, until they purchased their own home in Hopkinton on January 12, 2006. Their new home was located on a quiet cul-de-sac with only 8 neighbors, creating a peaceful setting close to a major city. Despite Neil Entwistle's efforts to find work as a computer programmer and IT specialist, he encountered difficulties in finding work, leading to financial stress and mounting debt. To ease the financial burden, Neil Entwistle turned to selling PC parts on eBay. However, his business was affected by customer complaints about undelivered orders, forcing eBay to investigate fraud. An investigation into Neil Entwistle's eBay activities uncovered that he was using multiple accounts under different names. Further investigation revealed that Neil Entwistle was involved in running a website called millimaker.co.uk. This website promoted a get-rich-quick scheme that promised to help people in the adult entertainment industry make a guaranteed $6,000 per month within 6 months. The website also claimed to offer 24/7 assistance. However, these claims ultimately led to the website being shut down. Neil Entwistle used online platforms to find sexual partners. He visited several websites to pursue relationships looking for sexual partners. On Adult Friend Finder, Neil Entwistle created a profile and emailed several women expressing his interest in meeting sexual partners. An investigation found incriminating evidence on Neil Entwistle's laptop. In his profile, Neil Entwistle stated that he was interested in meeting American women of different ages. Neil Entwistle also mentioned that he wanted to confirm whether American women were better in bed than women from other countries. Neil Entwistle's profile indicated that he was looking for a specific type of casual relationship and was open to meeting people with similar interests. Testimony at the trial revealed Neil Entwistle had continued his interest in escort services up to January 18, 2006. Online searches he conducted on Google included Blonde Bay Escort Service, Sex Escort Services Westboro, and Escort in Worcester. In their defense, Neil Entwistle's lawyers claimed that his wife, Rachel, was dissatisfied with their sex life. However, when reviewing Neil Entwistle's internet search history, it is revealed that Neil Entwistle had much darker motives than seeking out prostitutes and seeking relationships with other women. During this time, Neil Entwistle visited his father-in-law, Joe Matarazzo, in Carver, Massachusetts. Joe Matarazzo, a member of the Old Colony Sporting Club, had previously taught Neil Entwistle how to shoot. Neil Entwistle also had a .22 caliber revolver with Joe Matarazzo's family. However, on this occasion, Neil Entwistle planned to steal a gun from Joe Matarazzo's family. Neil Entwistle went to his in-laws' home, found a hidden gun, and took it back to his house in Hopkinton. Once home, he secretly hid the firearm, waiting for the right moment to carry out a violent act against his family. On January 20, 2006, Neil Entwistle entered the master bedroom of his home, where his wife, Rachel, and their 9-month-old daughter, Lillian, were sleeping in their new bed. Neil Entwistle shot Rachel in the head and then shot Lillian, who was lying next to her. The bullet passed through Lillian's body and also hit Rachel in the left chest. Later that day, Neil Entwistle returned to Carver with the uncleaned weapon. He would later claim that he had gone shopping at Staples on that Friday and discovered his family dead when he got home. After leaving Carver, Neil Entwistle drove to Boston's Logan Airport on the evening of January 20, 2006. At the airport, he made 2 successful ATM withdrawals totaling $800, but 3 additional attempts to withdraw $420 were declined. The next day, January 21, 2006, Neil Entwistle bought a one-way ticket to London without checking any luggage. He boarded a British Airways flight that departed Boston at 8:15 p.m. that evening. Unbeknownst to Neil Entwistle, several neighbors he had invited for dinner, including Joanna Gatley and her sister Maureen, arrived at his home around 7 p.m. to find it locked with the lights on inside. Concerned for Rachel's safety, neighbors attempted to contact her mother, but were unable to reach her. They then called 911 at around 8:30. Police arrived at Neil Entwistle's home to search for clues about the missing family. Upon entering, Sergeant Michael Sutton observed the bedroom, noticing a large unmade bed, but nothing unusual. After completing their search, the police locked the house and left. However, Joanna Gatley and Maureen were still worried and decided to spend the night in the car outside the house, hoping that Rachel's family would return. To cope with the cold weather, they made several trips to the gas station restroom. The following Sunday morning, Joanna Gatley and Maureen gained entry to the house using the garage door code they had obtained from a next-door neighbor the night before. Inside, Joanna Gatley and Maureen discovered dishes and leftover food in the kitchen, indicating that the family had just finished eating. The bathtub was still full of water, indicating that the couple had bathed their infant daughter. They proceeded to the master bedroom, then to Lillian's bathroom, where classical music was playing, and finally checked the living room. Rachel's mother and stepfather then arrived at Rachel's house, and together they searched around the house. After assessing the situation, they decided to report the family missing to the Hopkinton Police Department. The police arrived at Rachel's house, Sergeant Sutton entered the basement and detected a foul odor. He followed the stench into the house to the master bedroom, where he found the bodies of Rachel and her infant child, Lillian. The mother's body was lying on a bed, covered in clothes. Rachel had her arms spread across Lillian's chest, both of them wearing pajamas. Autopsy results showed that Rachel died from a gunshot wound to the head, while Lillian was shot in the torso. DNA evidence was also found on the barrel of the gun and on the butt of the gun, belonging to Neil Entwistle. About 36 hours after returning to England, Neil Entwistle visited his parents, Cliff and Yvonne. He told them that he had been driving around and had spent the previous night in a hotel. During this visit, Neil Entwistle revealed to his parents that he had discovered the bodies of his wife and daughter. On January 23, 2006, Neil Entwistle had a 2-hour telephone conversation with Hopkinton Police, which was recorded. On January 26, 2006, U.S. law enforcement officials traveled to the UK to interview Neil Entwistle. The next day, after consulting with a lawyer at the U.S. Embassy in London, Neil Entwistle chose not to cooperate with the American detectives. Meanwhile, Rachel and her daughter Lillian were buried in Evergreen Cemetery in Kingston, Massachusetts, under the surname Souza, sharing a single grave. With around 500 people attending the funeral to pay their respects. However, Neil Entwistle was absent from the ceremony, and Neil Entwistle's name was not mentioned in the proceedings or inscribed on the headstone. Despite this, Neil Entwistle sent a bouquet of flowers, consisting of an orange rose and a white lily, with a note that read, "My orange roses and lilies forever," signed Sakoko. After returning to the UK, Neil Entwistle resumed his normal life in February 2006. However, the media continued to gather outside his parents' home in Worksop. Neil Entwistle went to Notting Hill for dinner with his old crew from York University, followed by a trip to the cinema. Just a week after the funeral, on February 8, 2006, the Middlesex County District Attorney's Office issued an arrest warrant for Neil Entwistle. The following day, February 9, 2006, Neil Entwistle was arrested by police at Royal Oak Station as he was about to board a train. Neil Entwistle was returned to the United States on February 15 and appeared in court, where he was denied bail and held at the Middlesex County Jail in Cambridge, Massachusetts. On March 28, 2006, Neil Entwistle was formally charged with murder and illegal possession of a firearm and ammunition. Neil Entwistle pleaded not guilty despite the charges against him. Almost a year after the incident, in December 2006, authorities at Middlesex County Jail found letters Neil Entwistle had written to his parents and lawyers. These letters showed that Neil Entwistle was depressed and might be thinking about killing himself. As a result, he was moved to Bridgewater Hospital for a psychiatric evaluation before being sent back to Middlesex County. Forensic psychiatrist Christopher Cordes believed that Neil Entwistle's behavior was caused by Asperger's syndrome, a view that was shared by Dr. David Holmes. After several delays, the process of choosing jurors for Neil Entwistle's trial at Middlesex Superior Court began in June 2008. The trial for the double murder of Neil Entwistle's wife and daughter began on June 2, 2008, in Massachusetts. Elliot Weinstein led the defense team for Neil Entwistle. During the trial, Elliot attempted to object to the prosecution's plan to introduce DNA evidence, but was unsuccessful. Elliot also attempted to suppress other evidence found in the family home, arguing that it was taken without a warrant, but this effort was also unsuccessful. Neil Entwistle chose not to call any witnesses or testify during the trial. Notably, Neil Entwistle showed little emotion throughout the proceedings. On June 25, 2008, the jury delivered a guilty verdict, convicting Neil Entwistle of 2 counts of first-degree murder, as well as unlawful possession of a firearm and ammunition. As a result, Neil Entwistle was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Despite the severe sentence, Neil Entwistle appeared calm as he left the courtroom. Neil Entwistle was incarcerated at the Sousa Baranowski Correctional Center. In August 2008, he became the victim of a hoax when he shaved his head to seek protection from a white supremacist prison gang. However, instead of receiving protection, the gang threatened Neil Entwistle's life. After this incident, Neil Entwistle was placed in protective custody. He was then transferred to the Old Colony Correctional Center, a prison located in Bridgewater, Massachusetts, in December. The tragic death of Rachel and her infant daughter has left a lasting legacy of grief for the family and those who loved them. In the face of this tragic loss, the community has come together to support and comfort the grieving family. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Christina Ann and Thompson Harris. Christina Ann Thompson, 30, and Jason Thomas Harris, 40, had been married since 2003 after dating for about 5 years. They had their first child in 2009, and their lives changed significantly. Despite the challenges of everyday life, they seemed happy with their new life as parents. Christina took care of their child and the household, while Jason worked at a plastics factory. As their child grew up, Christina had the opportunity to contribute to the family budget by getting a job. However, in May 2014, she had to take maternity leave as she was expecting her second child. On September 29, 2014, Jason left for work and exchanged a few words with Christina, who was not feeling well due to a cold. Despite her poor health, she assured Jason that she was okay. A few hours later, Jason called his wife to check on her, but she didn't answer the phone. This sparked worry in Jason, as he couldn't understand why Christina wasn't answering his calls. Jason couldn't reach Christina, so he asked a neighbor to check on her. He told the neighbor that Christina was sick and wasn't answering her phone. The neighbor went to the house, knocked on the door, and called out to Christina, but no one answered. Since the door was unlocked, the neighbor went inside and found Christina lying on the bed. She couldn't wake Christina up, so she called 911 and then got a neighbor who was a registered nurse to help. The nurse checked Christina's pulse and confirmed that she had passed away. On September 29, 2014, 4 months after giving birth to her second child, Christina was found dead in her house. When the police arrived, Jason was already there. He told them that Christina was sick and he had left her alone in the morning. 2 days later, the medical examiner determined that Christina's death was caused by an overdose of a prohibited substance. This news shocked her family and friends. Christina, a mother of 2 young children, was found dead, and many people who knew her were shocked. They claimed she had never used illegal substances. Her mother, Kathy May, reported to the police that Christina was fine when she saw her the day before her death, contradicting her husband Jason's statement that Christina was struggling with a cold. Kathy May also revealed that Christina described her marriage to Jason as complicated. Jason was unhappy in the marriage but didn't want a divorce because he didn't want to pay child support or lose custody of their children. The neighbors who had discovered Christina's body shared some information with the police. Apparently, Jason told them that on the evening before Christina's death, he made her cereal with milk, and while eating, she lost consciousness and dropped the plate. The police understood that it was hard for Christina's loved ones to accept that someone they knew well might have a hidden dark side. However, as the investigation progressed, the police began to doubt that Christina had used any illegal substances. Christina's family refused to give up, and they didn't believe the story. Christina's family, particularly her mother and sisters, urged the police to test her breast milk for evidence. Initially, the police delayed this request for 48 hours, but the family's persistence eventually led them to comply. This marked the first time in Michigan's history that breast milk was used as evidence in a case. Tests conducted at her workplace and the hospital where she gave birth to her second child came back negative for prohibited substances. At the time of her death, her second child was just 4 months old, and Christina was still breastfeeding both children. According to her husband, Harris, and her mother, Christina was meticulous about what she consumed because she was breastfeeding and wanted to ensure her baby's health and safety. Christina had been pumping and storing her breast milk in a freezer, with some of the frozen milk stored at her mother's house. Investigators tested 3 bags of breast milk for prohibited substances, using the dates on the bags to determine which ones were frozen before her death. The results showed no traces of banned substances in any of the milk samples. This finding suggested that Christina had not taken the substance that caused her death. Only one person, Jason's sister, had claimed that Christina had used banned substances. This statement led investigators to take a closer look at Jason and consider the possibility that Christina's death was intentional. The investigation was slow, and it's unclear how it would have progressed without the active involvement of Christina's family. Her mother, Kathy May, kept in close contact with the Davidson police, reminding them about her daughter's case. In August 2016, almost 2 years after Christina's death, Kathy May was able to get the Davidson police to turn the case over to the Michigan State Police. With new investigators on the case, the story began to unfold, revealing more information about Jason Harris's behavior before and after his wife's death. Harris was involved in multiple extramarital affairs, and Christina was aware of these infidelities. She had confided in family members and co-workers about the situation, including the fact that Harris was texting another woman while she was in the hospital giving birth to their youngest child. Christina had expressed concerns about her safety, telling a co-worker that if she died, Harris would be the one responsible. When asked if she was serious, she confirmed that she was. Harris had made public statements that questioned the paternity of their second child and had complained about Christina's behavior after giving birth, saying she was depressed and refusing to work. He also complained about her nagging him. A co-worker of Harris's reported that he had made disturbing comments about Christina, including expressing a desire for her death. This co-worker described the relationship between Harris and Christina as toxic, citing frequent arguments between them. The most alarming aspect of this case is that Harris was open about his desire to get rid of Christina, and he even took steps to harm her. Unfortunately, his words and actions were not taken seriously until it was too late. Harris had attempted to poison Christina on at least 2 occasions by mixing substances into her drinks. Fortunately, Christina was able to detect the unusual taste and avoided drinking the beverages. Harris asked a co-worker for a substance that would not affect the taste or smell of food and drinks, explaining that he wanted to poison Christina so she wouldn't feel anything. When he told another co-worker that Christina didn't drink the water with the substance because it tasted funny, the co-worker refused to give him more pills. A co-worker testified that Harris told him he wanted to stop Christina from nagging him, but the co-worker thought he was joking. Harris also told a co-worker that he had hired someone to kill Christina, but the person was arrested before they could carry out the task. Harris then asked the co-worker to kill Christina in exchange for $10,000, which would be paid from a $100,000 life insurance policy Christina had through her employer. The co-worker refused the offer, believing that Harris was just venting his emotions and that the offer to kill Christina was a joke. He remembered the conversation as Harris saying something like, "I'm tired of her. I'm going to get rid of her." Back to the case, the 911 operator asked the neighbor who found Christina's body if there were any needles at the scene, but the neighbor did not see any. The neighbor, a registered nurse, testified that Christina's body was cold and stiff, had no pulse, and had a white foamy substance coming from her mouth. The neighbor did not attempt to resuscitate Christina because she was already dead. The paramedics who responded to the scene confirmed that Christina was dead. Harris told his supervisor that he had asked a neighbor to check on Christina and that he had to go home because she was unresponsive. However, witnesses reported that Harris did not appear concerned or in a hurry when he arrived at the house. Harris entered the house without speaking to the neighbor he had asked to check on Christina. Later that morning, Harris contacted Christina's supervisor at work and informed her of Christina's death. He also inquired about collecting the $100,000 life insurance policy benefit that Christina had through her job. One of the women Harris was in a relationship with told investigators that Harris contacted her on the day of Christina's death and said that his wife had died from taking too much of a banned substance. This suggests that Harris knew the cause of Christina's death before the medical examiner's report was released. Harris shared some details about the night before Christina's death, including her restless sleep, frequent coughing, and unusual comment about the chemical taste of her water. He later visited her workplace to inquire about life insurance proceeds, collecting a $20,000 death benefit and raising suspicions with his actions. A mistress also moved in with him and his children, either before or after her funeral. The mistress stated that Jason Harris's adult children from a previous marriage moved into the house just days after Christina's death. Police also found that Jason Harris had bought an airline ticket to Rhode Island 9 days after Christina's death to visit a woman he had exchanged over 5,800 texts with. The county medical examiner, Dr. Brian Hunter, submitted post-mortem blood and urine samples for testing. Although the test results were consistent with a lethal dose of the substance, there was no evidence of how the substance was administered, as there were no injection marks on her body and no powder residues or rolling paper were found near the scene of her death. Michigan State Police took over the investigation in 2016. Dr. Hunter changed the manner of death from accidental to homicide after a wrongful death action. Jason Harris was charged with first-degree murder and others. His bail was denied. Harris pleaded not guilty and will contest the charges. The prosecution eliminated the possibility of injection as the cause of death because there were no injection marks or a needle found at the scene. Dr. Judge testified that it was unlikely the substance was inhaled through the nose because there was no evidence of a rolled dollar bill or paper used for snorting. When given the opportunity to speak, Jason Harris did not apologize or express remorse. Instead, he claimed he was innocent. The jury did not believe his claims and found him guilty of the charges against him. On November 17, 2021, the jury delivered a guilty verdict for 47-year-old Harris. 3 weeks later, the court sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Conspiracy, orchestrated so that Amanda and Larry could be together as a couple. The first hearing focused on Amanda, who received a 40-year sentence. However, the judge predicted she would likely serve only 20 years. During Anna Marie's hearing, she attempted to demonstrate her opposition to John's murder, but felt coerced by her father and sister to see it through. She only attended Larry and Amanda's wedding out of fear for her own future. Ultimately, Anna Marie was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Cat West. The case of Cat West, Cat Dawn West. Martin was born on February 15, 1975 in Davie, Florida. She grew up as an only child in a humble and modest family environment with parents Nancy and John Jonathan Martin. As a child, Cat longed for a sibling, but her mother's health issues prevented that from happening. Instead, she became extremely attached to dolls, treating them like they were alive, singing to them, and carrying them around in school. Cat was known for her beauty and outgoing personality, actively participating in sports and dance. However, during her teenage years, she began to show signs of bipolar disorder, which included depression and anxiety, followed by periods of extreme happiness and restlessness. Unfortunately, her parents didn't realize what was happening until later. By that time, Cat had started using alcohol to cope with her emotions. It wasn't until she received treatment for alcoholism that the underlying cause of her problems was discovered. In her 20s, Kat overcame her addiction to alcohol, but managing her bipolar disorder was more difficult. She had to take several strong medications that interacted with each other and caused side effects. Eventually, her disorder was brought under control, but she had to continue taking medication for the rest of her life. Sadly, her life was cut short. Kat dreamed of a traditional life with a husband, children, and a family, but her personal struggles with a psychological disorder and alcohol issues made it challenging. Despite these difficulties, she was a popular and lively person who loved being the center of attention. Kat had aspirations to become a model and would attend castings, trying out different looks. Her idol was Marilyn Monroe, whom she admired greatly. She watched Monroe's movies repeatedly, collected posters, and imitated her style and image. Interestingly, Kat bore a resemblance to Monroe, which she happily exploited and treasured. Although Kat never became a famous model, her photos regularly appeared in local magazines, earning her some recognition and a small following. People would occasionally recognize her on the streets of her hometown. At the age of 28, she finally met the man she would start a family with, William West. William Jeffrey West, who goes by his middle name Jeffrey, was born in 1970 in Alabama, where he grew up in an ordinary family. As a child, Jeffrey envisioned a future in the military or law enforcement. He was an excellent student, enthusiastic about sports, and physically fit. In the early 1990s, Jeffrey enlisted in the U.S. military, starting as a military police officer. His commitment led him to become a recruiter, responsible for recruiting new members into the Army and Navy. He eventually became the head of a recruitment division. Throughout his life, Jeffrey dedicated 20 years to serving in the military. William balanced his military career with higher education, earning a bachelor's degree in public relations from the University of South Carolina, and later a master's degree in criminal justice and disaster and emergency management. He was intelligent, composed, and goal-oriented, yet modest and somewhat introverted, preferring quiet gatherings to loud parties and shunning the spotlight. After marrying young, he became a devoted family man and responsible parent to 2 children. After retiring from the military, William joined the police department of a university town as a corporal, tasked with ensuring campus safety. He took his duties seriously and responsibly, although he never had to use his issued service firearm throughout his career. Kat and Jeffrey, an unlikely couple, met in the mid-2000s. At the time, Jeffrey was still serving in the military and married to his first wife. Despite their differences, Jeffrey being a stern, quiet military man and Kat being a flamboyant, bold attention seeker, they felt an instant attraction. Their differences, including their 5-year age gap, Jeffrey's existing marriage, and Kat's struggles with alcoholism, did not deter their relationship. Jeffrey filed for divorce shortly after meeting Kat, and in a whirlwind romance, they got married in a Las Vegas chapel just 5 months later in 2005. They had a daughter, Lola, and settled in Sarah, Alabama, Jeffrey's hometown, in a cozy custom-built home designed by Kat herself. The bedroom was a shrine to her idol, Marilyn Monroe, with numerous portraits adorning the walls. Despite their vastly different personalities, the Wests were known to their neighbors as a happy couple. Kat, who preferred to be called Caitlin, was a fashionista who reveled in attention. She took great care in her appearance, always donning bold makeup, stylish hair, and fashionable outfits that drew admiration. She beamed with joy, perpetually smiling, and thrived on compliments. In stark contrast, Jeffrey appeared reserved, serious, and disciplined, traits likely shaped by his lengthy military career, and often seemed overshadowed by Kat's vibrant personality. Kat struggled to succeed as a model after getting married and having a daughter. Instead, she focused on being a homemaker, but she felt unfulfilled and craved attention. With the rise of social media, Kat started posting photos online, initially harmless pictures inspired by Barbie and Marilyn Monroe. Over time, her posts became more provocative. Sources close to the couple say that Kat's husband didn't object to her new hobby and even helped her by taking photos. This turned into a profitable venture for Kat through paid subscriptions. The couple was seen buying seafood dishes, fine wine, and candles to set a romantic mood, captured on surveillance cameras. They appeared happy and carefree, joking and smiling, with no sign of the tragedy to come. After dinner, Kat, who had previously struggled with alcohol dependence, became her online persona, Kitty Cat, under the influence of the drinks. She asked her husband Jeff to take sultry photos, first in lingerie and then nude. Jeff agreed and took several revealing shots which were posted on Kat's private profile for fans only. By around 1 p.m., what was supposed to be a romantic evening escalated into a tragic nightmare. The next morning, January 13th, around 5 a.m., a young neighbor of the Wests headed to work. Although the sun hadn't risen, it was light enough outside for her to notice something unusual as she passed the Wests' house. At first, she wasn't sure what she was seeing, but as she slowed down, she realized with horror that an almost fully naked woman was lying motionless on the road. A woman witnessed someone standing on the doorstep of a house, but they vanished when they saw her. She couldn't determine if they entered the house or fled down the street. She was startled and uncertain, so she didn't approach the body right away. Instead, she went home, informed her parents, and together they called emergency services to report their discovery. At the operator's request, the family returned to the scene and examined the body. They identified it as Mrs. West, but unfortunately there was no pulse. Her body was cold, and rigor mortis had set in. Mrs. West's body lay face down on the sidewalk, wearing only a pink bra top. A blood-stained pool had formed beneath her head, and a bottle of absinthe with bloodstains was nearby. Her damaged smartphone lay a short distance away. Since the area was quiet and residential, there were no other witnesses that night. This left a mystery about what happened between 8:30 p.m., when the West's car was last seen, and 5 a.m., when the body was discovered. The only person who might know what happened is Mr. West, but is he hiding something? Detective Michael Melhoff was one of the first to arrive at the scene of the crime. He went to the house where her body was found and spoke to the man who answered the door. The man appeared anxious but claimed he didn't know what was going on. When the detective asked him where his wife was, the man said he had just woken up and couldn't find her in bed. The detective then asked the man to step outside, where he told him that her body had been found nearby, identified by neighbors as Kat West. The man put on a jacket and followed the detective, confirming that the body was indeed his wife. However, his reaction was surprisingly calm. He didn't rush to the body or show any signs of distress. When questioned about his actions the previous night, the man said he had slept soundly after a night of drinking. When asked what he thought might have happened to his wife, he simply shrugged and suggested it could have been an accident. The man also mentioned that his wife had bipolar disorder and struggled with alcoholism, which sometimes led to erratic behavior. He said that she would occasionally use their backyard trampoline, sometimes injuring herself when she missed it. A search of the house found no signs of a struggle or violence, but it did reveal evidence of a night of drinking, with 2 plates of leftover food, 2 glasses, and a half-empty brandy bottle on the kitchen table. The police found Jeffrey's wife's high heels under the table and her matching underwear on the floor, but some suspicious items caught their attention: blood-stained napkins in the trash and an open bottle of cleaner. Jeffrey was arrested as the main suspect that day. He told investigators that he and his wife Kat had a tumultuous evening. After a photo shoot, Jeffrey wanted to move to the bedroom for a more intimate setting. He left to take a shower and returned to find Kat still sitting at the table, drinking straight from the bottle and texting on her phone. This infuriated Jeffrey, and he asked her to put the phone away, but she refused. When he tried to take it from her, they had a small struggle, during which he accidentally elbowed her face, causing a few drops of blood to appear from her nose. Jeffrey claimed that this was the blood the police found on the napkins. He said he eventually took the phone from Kat and threw it out the door into the darkness. Then, he went to bed, thinking Kat would soon calm down and join him. He allegedly had no idea what happened next until the police knocked on his door, asking about Kat. Mr. West proposed several theories to explain his wife's disappearance and death. One possibility was that she went outside to find her phone, taking the absinthe bottle with her to finish it. In this scenario, she might have fallen, hit her head on the bottle, lost consciousness, and frozen to death. Alternatively, someone might have attacked her. Mr. West also found it puzzling that his wife was not wearing the bottom part of her pink lingerie set, and that she had gone outside in just a bra, without putting on any outerwear that was readily available near the entrance. He attributed these unusual actions to her being intoxicated from alcohol. The suspect's story raised suspicions due to its inconsistencies and suspicious omissions. He claimed to be too drunk to recall certain details, leaving investigators to reconstruct the sequence of events. Although there were no witnesses, the evidence suggested that the 42-year-old woman died from a blow to the head, likely caused by the absinthe bottle found nearby, which was compounded by hypothermia. The autopsy revealed that the victim's blood alcohol level was extremely high, indicating severe intoxication that would have impaired her coordination and increased her risk of losing consciousness. At first, the evidence seemed to support a simple explanation. The heavily intoxicated victim had gone outside to look for her phone, taking the unfinished bottle of absinthe with her. She likely lost her balance, fell, hit her head on the bottle, lost consciousness, and died from her injuries and exposure. However, the investigation found this scenario too convenient and suspiciously staged. Although the bottle with blood traces was found next to the victim's head and her smartphone was nearby, forensic analysis cast doubt on the idea that she had fallen and hit her head by herself. If that were the case, the bottle would likely have rolled away from her head, not remained alongside it. Kat's and her husband Jeff's fingerprints were found on a bottle, along with some unidentifiable smudged prints. The presence of blood-stained napkins and an opened bottle of household cleaner in the house led investigators to conclude that the couple had a violent argument. According to the theory presented in court, Kat's obsession with her online subscribers sparked the fight. In a fit of rage, Jeff allegedly struck Kat with the bottle, causing a fatal injury. Panicked, he attempted to make it look like an accidental fall by cleaning up the blood, but he failed to dispose of the evidence. The fitness app on Jeff's phone supported this theory, as it showed he was active in the house until midnight and again early in the morning before the police arrived, contradicting his claim of being asleep. The police believed Jeff was trying to conceal evidence during these periods. A neighbor who discovered Kat's body remembered seeing a male figure on the doorstep who quickly left in an unknown direction in the early morning darkness. However, she couldn't confirm whether it was Jeff or someone else, nor could she say whether the person entered the house or not. The investigators were intrigued by the online presence of the deceased, who had many male admirers paying to see her revealing photos as Kitty Cat. This led them to consider the possibility of an obsessed follower among her subscribers, someone who might have tried to track her down for a personal encounter. The victim, a middle-aged homemaker, regularly received messages from men, some of which were inappropriate. However, she kept her distance, and there were no explicit threats or harassment. A few persistent fans from other states with solid alibis were quickly cleared as suspects. Despite this, mysterious footprints were found on the doorstep that didn't belong to the homeowners, but they vanished on the lawn, leaving their origin unknown. Jeffrey West's neighbors, friends, and family described the couple as happy and content, with Jeffrey aware of his wife Kat's online activities, which he viewed as harmless. However, their social circle was unaware of Kat's online persona, Kitty Cat, just as most of her followers didn't know her real identity. When asked if he had ever been violent towards Kat, Jeffrey denied it, saying he loved her too much to harm her. Despite this, the couple frequently argued, including a heated exchange on January 12th, in which Kat questioned their compatibility due to their differing personalities. Although Jeffrey remained the prime suspect based on forensic evidence and circumstantial details, his family, including his parents, daughter, and in-laws, were convinced of his innocence, adamant that he could never harm Kat. Jeffrey West was arrested and unable to post the $500,000 bail, so he remained in custody for nearly 3 years until his trial. During this time, he was offered a plea deal, which would have reduced his sentence if he admitted to killing his wife. However, he refused the deal, maintaining his innocence. The trial, which began in November 2020, received significant media attention due to Kat's online fame. This publicity put a lot of pressure on the judges and jurors. By this point, the possibility of someone else being involved in Kat's death was no longer considered. The prosecution argued that all the evidence pointed to Jeffrey West as the killer. They believed that in a fit of jealousy and while under the influence of alcohol, he hit his wife with a bottle, causing fatal injuries. In a panic, they suggested that he then staged the scene to look like an accident and removed evidence from the house. Jeffrey's defense team, on the other hand, argued that Kat's death was indeed an accident. They cited her extremely high blood alcohol levels, which they believed affected her balance and coordination. Kat's mother gave a heartfelt testimony in support of her son-in-law, describing her daughter as eccentric, but emphasizing that Jeffrey loved her deeply and would never harm her. She also asked the court to consider the well-being of their granddaughter, Lola, who had already lost her mother and now risked losing her father as well. After deliberating, the jury delivered a guilty verdict for involuntary manslaughter on January 11, 2021. Jeffrey received the maximum sentence of 13 years, including time served. It's worth noting that if he had accepted the initial plea deal, he might have already been released from prison. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Lindsay Wilson. Lindsay Wilson was a kind-hearted and empathetic person who wanted to love and be loved. Her primary mistake was failing to recognize her partner's true nature in time. As time passed, she struggled to escape from their codependent relationship. Lindsay's story began when she discovered she was pregnant at 17. Raised in a loving family, she wasn't emotionally unprepared, but her boyfriend's abandonment scared her. Lindsay was aware that motherhood would bring physical and financial challenges. She was relieved to meet Mitchell, who seemed like a gentleman, attentive and caring, and didn't shy away from her despite her pregnancy. However, his true nature would eventually be exposed, leading to devastating consequences. Mitchell fell in love with Lindsay at first sight and wanted to spend his life with her, raising her child as his own. He worked hard to provide for her, even taking extra hours to ensure she wanted for nothing. However, their 5-week-old relationship shocked their parents, who felt they were rushing into marriage. Despite their doubts, they got married in August 1995, surrounded by Lindsay's family and only a few of Mitchell's relatives. Lindsay's family noticed that Mitchell was overly sweet and polite, but they kept their misgivings to themselves. The newlyweds had a dispute on their wedding night, which left a bad impression on Lindsay's relatives. Mitchell's behavior became increasingly controlling and violent. Lindsay sought psychological support and reported the abuse, but her husband would answer the door and phone calls, preventing her from contacting her social worker. The social worker, concerned for Lindsay's safety, reported her missing in February 1999. The police visited the address but were unable to speak with Lindsay, and Mitchell claimed she had left him for another man. The search for Lindsay began, and her relatives reported that they last saw her on December 11th, appearing happy and healthy. Her mother had tried to reach her on December 24th, but was told by Mitchell that she had left with friends, accused of infidelity. Detectives were puzzled by the fact that no one had expressed concern about Lindsay's well-being for 2 months. It was clear that Mitchell had isolated her from the outside world, including her close relatives. Although they had previously struggled to communicate with her, it was possible for Lindsay to go unnoticed for a while. However, this didn't mean her family wasn't worried. The news of her disappearance was alarming to everyone. They all described Lindsay as a modest person who didn't drink, and Mitchell had restricted her contact with friends and acquaintances. There were many inconsistencies in Mitchell's story, which contradicted his character profile and raised the investigators' suspicions. It seemed unlikely that Mitchell would simply let his wife go, and that Lindsay would leave her children with a tyrannical husband. The situation merited a thorough investigation, so the police spoke with all of Lindsay's acquaintances, trying to find anyone who had seen her after the family gathering. They questioned neighbors and requested surveillance footage from the residential complex where they lived. Unfortunately, all footage had been deleted by the time Lindsay's disappearance was reported. However, another date was discovered when she was last seen in person on December 15th at the local post office, sending several letters and postcards. Her older sister also admitted that they met that day, despite Mitchell's disapproval. The sisters had tea together, and during their brief conversation, Lindsay slipped a note into her sister's hand, asking her to read it later. The sister put the note in her purse and forgot about it in the whirlwind of days. Regrettably, she couldn't find it later, and its contents remain unknown. After that day, no one saw Lindsay again for several months. Investigators tried to hold on to any information they could, suspecting that she was no longer alive due to her prolonged absence. They couldn't charge Mitchell without sufficient grounds and evidence, but the more they learned about Thay's life history, the stronger their suspicions grew. They had married shortly after their wedding and moved away from their parents, renting an apartment in Southport. Later, Lindsay gave birth to a daughter named Robin. The only shadow over the new baby's joy was her stepfather's volatile temper. After moving, the young wife fully experienced her husband's unstable moods. One moment, he could be joking and laughing. The next, he became unbalanced and aggressive. She tried to maintain a fragile peace at home, but didn't realize how completely she had submitted to his will. He controlled every step she took and caused a scene whenever she failed to hear the phone or answer a call. Loud arguments were often followed by passionate reconciliations, with Mitchell kneeling, begging for forgiveness, and professing his love. For a while, it seemed that peace had returned to the family, but then the cycle would start again. Conflict, reconciliation, repetition. Lindsay began to lose recognition of the man she loved. She often told her relatives about what was happening, and they advised her to return home and end her suffering. It was hard for the young woman to admit her mistake. In one interview, the Wilsons mentioned that she always lived with thoughts of the past, each time her husband assured her he would change and everything would be fine. As a loving wife, she wanted to believe him and waited for him to return to his former self, gentle and caring. Meanwhile, Mitchell increasingly tightened his grip and control, forbidding his wife to go out alone in the evenings and eventually restricting her from being anywhere without him. He was jealous of her every move, yet he himself was seen in dubious liaisons. Lindsay confided in her older sister about her suspicions of her husband Mitchell's infidelity. She shared an incident where a woman came to their home looking for him and was shocked to learn he was married. This led to an argument that escalated into physical violence. From then on, physical abuse became a regular part of their life as Mitchell sought to control Lindsay and maintain his reputation. Mitchell began to isolate Lindsay from her neighbors, friends, and family, despite her efforts to secretly maintain contact with them. Lindsay stayed in the marriage because Mitchell provided a comfortable life, financially supporting her and their child. However, when she discovered she was pregnant again, she knew she didn't want more children and decided to terminate the pregnancy. When Mitchell found out, he became enraged, hurling insults and physically intimidating her. Lindsay packed her things, took her child, and returned to her parents' home. Her family was relieved, and she proceeded with the pregnancy termination as planned. Over time, she began to miss Mitchell, who frequently called and begged her to come back. Mitchell eventually convinced Lindsay to give him another chance, and initially, everything seemed to go well. However, his severe anger outbursts continued, and he destroyed their apartment, leading to them being evicted. They had to take out a large loan and move to a more modest apartment. Their relationship continued to deteriorate, with Mitchell frequently leaving home for days or weeks at a time. Lindsay grew accustomed to his behavior, but eventually filed for divorce and returned to her parents' home. She realized she couldn't cope with the separation on her own and reached out to a local charity that assisted women in difficult situations. With their help, Lindsay found subsidized housing in another city and took measures to distance herself from Mitchell, including obtaining a restraining order. She began to rebuild her life, started a journal, and sought therapy. Despite her precautions, Mitchell discovered her phone number and began calling her, demanding to see their son. Lindsay, who had been feeling lonely, reunited with Mitchell despite her relatives' and friends' disapproval. They began living together again, which shocked those who cared about her. However, Mitchell remained unpopular with them, and they eventually stopped communicating with Lindsay, believing she had returned to an abusive relationship. This decision ultimately proved fatal. Initially, Mitchell was cooperative during the investigation into Lindsay's disappearance. However, as the case gained media attention, he shifted his focus and became a public figure, inviting journalists into his home. His numerous media appearances seemed insincere, with some viewers noticing a smirk on his face. Lindsay's parents and detectives viewed Mitchell as the prime suspect, but the lack of direct evidence hindered their efforts. Searches were conducted at their home and throughout the area, but Mitchell continued to appear in the media, even declaring that Lindsay's family would one day apologize for their suspicions. On the eve of the holiday season, Mitchell sent a postcard to the lead investigator with a pack of hair dye, mocking the detective and displaying his arrogance. The investigation team responded by hinting that Mitchell was not who he claimed to be, tarnishing his reputation. In February 2000, it was discovered that Mitchell had been forging Lindsay's signature to receive social benefits, which indirectly implicated him in her disappearance. Despite the financial motive, Mitchell's popularity worked in his favor, and many supporters argued that he, as a single father, deserved financial assistance. These circumstances hindered the detectives' ability to bring charges, but they eventually accused Mitchell of fraud. He was found guilty and sentenced to community service. However, Mitchell's popularity began to wane as the forgery of his missing wife's signature appeared suspicious. The number of angry comments increased, and Mitchell eventually snapped, blaming the media for intruding into his personal life. The case might have remained unsolved had it not been for a chance discovery on June 1, 2000, when a parkgoer noticed their dog acting strangely near a roller coaster. Human remains were uncovered, and forensic examination confirmed they belonged to Lindsay Key. This breakthrough revitalized the investigation, making it clear that Lindsay was a victim of a brutal crime. The focus shifted to finding the perpetrator, and on June 7, Mitchell was brought in for questioning. After 36 hours of intermittent interrogation, the suspect broke down and confessed to dismembering and murdering Lindsay on December 15, 1998. Mitchell told authorities that Lindsay had informed him of her decision to file for divorce earlier that day, which enraged him and led him to attack and strangle her in front of their children. He then hid her lifeless body in their bedroom, using a gap under the door to conceal any odors. Realizing he needed help to dispose of the body, he enlisted the assistance of his brother Elliot, a butcher, who was initially hesitant but eventually persuaded. While the children played in the next room, Mitchell and Elliot dismembered Lindsay's body and later dispersed her remains across the city. During his confession, Mitchell showed no remorse or empathy, instead seeming proud of his actions and stating that without his confession, they would never have proven his guilt. The next day, he led authorities to the other locations where he had hidden her limbs, although her head and one hand were never recovered. Forensic comparison confirmed that the remains were indeed Lindsay, leaving no doubt about Mitchell's guilt. The trial of the Key brothers took place in January 2001, with Mitchell being found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 17 years. A court-appointed psychiatrist noted that Mitchell showed signs of being a narcissist with sadistic tendencies. His brother Elliot received a 7-year sentence for his role in concealing the crime. Lindsay's children were taken in by her maternal grandparents, who gave them their surname. 3 months after the sentence was handed down, another tragedy struck the Wilson family when one of Lindsay's older brothers, unable to cope with the shock, took his own life in the attic of their family home. As of 2017, Mitchell Key has been eligible for parole, but his lawyers have been denied 3 times. The Wilson family, including the children, are concerned that the murderer might eventually be released and have started a petition urging that he remain incarcerated. In an interview, Mr. Wilson mentioned hearing rumors that his former relative had attempted to end his life and added that he sincerely hopes the murderer will try again and succeed this time. He also commented on the prevalence of domestic Stockholm syndrome, where victims often adapt to their abusers throughout their lives, even when their families come to their aid.